The injury was fake. Craig said it into a live microphone. We were standing inside the Roseville Civic Center Auditorium at 311 Vernon Street. The Veterans Health Innovation Forum was underway. A company logo filled the screen behind him. Our company logo. For a second, nobody moved. Craig looked toward me, still holding the microphone. He seemed to expect me to help him. That was the part I remember most clearly. Not the accusation, not the low murmur moving through the room. It was the confidence on my husband's face. He believed I would stand up, smooth things over, and protect him from what he had just said. I didn't. I kept both hands resting on my cane. Craig gave a small laugh. That came out wrong. It hadn't. A woman near the front turned around to look at me. Craig moved to the next slide, but he was speaking faster now. He knew something had changed. What he didn't know was how long I had been waiting for him to tell the truth about what he thought of me. To explain that, I need to go back 6 weeks. At the time, I was 47. I had retired from the Army as a major after 20 years and 3 deployments. Craig was 50, and we had been running Miles Hansen Mobility together for almost 5 years. Running might be too generous. Craig designed most of our products. I handled operations, veteran outreach, compliance, and government contracts. On paper, I was the managing member. In daily life, Craig liked to tell people we didn't care about titles. Usually, he said that right after introducing himself as the founder. Our office sat in a small business park outside Roseville. We had 1 main room, 2 offices, and a workshop that always smelled like warm plastic. The break room sink leaked if you turned the faucet too far. One ceiling tile had a brown ring from an old roof problem. We kept saying we'd replace it when we had a good quarter. We hadn't replaced it. The company made mobility supports for people with lower back and pelvic injuries. Craig's main product was a lightweight brace with adjustable pressure points. It wasn't flashy. It helped people stand longer without feeling trapped inside hard plastic. The first version had been built for me. That was how the company started. In 2011, near the end of my 3rd deployment, the vehicle I was riding in rolled on a rough road. I don't remember the whole event. I remember dust inside my mouth. I remember somebody cutting through a strap. I remember telling a medic that my left boot felt crooked when it wasn't. The original scan showed fractures in my T12 vertebra and sacrum. Healing took a long time. Some days were manageable. Other days, putting on socks required planning. When I met Craig years later, he didn't treat me like I was fragile. That mattered to me. He watched how the standard braces pressed against my lower spine. Then he started cutting foam at our kitchen table. His first attempt looked terrible. I put it on and said, "This thing makes me look like a refrigerator." He walked around me twice. A supported refrigerator. It squeaks. That's a prototype feature. It pinches. That's not. We laughed a lot back then. By 2021, we had a working design. We formed the company that fall. Because we planned to pursue veteran health contracts, I insisted on clear control provisions in our operating agreement. Craig hadn't objected. We sat at the dining table with coffee and a stack of papers. I pointed to the section covering government agreements. "I need final approval on these," I said. "You're handling compliance anyway. That isn't the same thing." He leaned over the page. "What's the difference?" "The difference is that nobody signs in my name." Craig tapped the paragraph with his pen. "Fine. You get the last word on government contracts. It needs to say that." It does. He signed first. I signed after him. The completed agreement went into a blue compliance file. That file stayed in the locked cabinet behind my desk. I opened it during reviews, audits, and bid preparation. Otherwise, it was just another company record. For years, that arrangement worked. Then the VA mobility pilot came along. The proposed pilot was worth $2,400,000. That kind of money wouldn't make us rich. It would let us hire carefully, improve our molds, and stop stretching every payment until the next order cleared. We submitted the bid in 2025. My veteran status mattered. My injury history mattered. My control of the company mattered. I understood that from the beginning. Craig did too. The first clear problem appeared on a Monday morning. I arrived at the office just after 7. The workshop lights were already on, which meant Craig had come in early. I found him in the conference room. He had the company laptop connected to the wall screen. A presentation deck was open. Our product appeared beside a cropped photograph of me wearing my old uniform. Craig clicked to another slide when I entered. "You're early," he said. "So are you. Couldn't sleep." I set my coffee beside the door. "What are you working on?" "Forum deck. The forum isn't confirmed. It will be." He clicked again. A photograph of my first brace filled the screen. Under it was a short paragraph about how the design began. I stepped closer. The paragraph looked wrong. "Go back," I said. Craig stopped clicking. "To what?" "My service slide. We just passed it." "I know." He returned to the photograph of me. The original biography had stated that I was a retired Army major who had completed 3 deployments. It also described the fractures from the rollover and the long recovery afterward. The new version said I had experienced back discomfort during service. That was all. Back discomfort. I read it twice. Who changed this? Craig kept one hand on the laptop. I tightened the language. "You removed the injury." "No, I simplified it. A fractured vertebra isn't back discomfort. The medical details were too heavy. For a veterans health presentation, for an innovation forum." I looked at him. "Who asked you to change it?" "No one asked me. Then why did you?" Craig closed the laptop halfway. "Because the story was taking over the product. It's the reason the product exists. The product exists because I designed it." There was a little silence after that. Craig opened the laptop again. He didn't apologize. He just stared at the screen as though we had reached a normal disagreement about font size. I picked up my coffee. "Put the original language back. We should discuss that. We just did." He rubbed the side of his face. "Kristen, people don't need every detail. They need accurate details. They need enough to understand the concept." I walked around the table and stood beside him. "Show me the full deck. I'm still working on it. I can see that. I'll send it when it's clean. It's a company presentation." "And it's not ready." He lowered the laptop screen. That small movement bothered me more than his words. Craig had never closed a company file to keep me from viewing it. We argued about decisions, but we didn't hide work. At least I didn't think we did. I went into my office and unlocked the cabinet. The blue compliance file sat where it always did. I pulled it out and opened the operating agreement. The reserved authority provision was still marked with a yellow tab. Government contracts required my final approval. Any statement about company control had to be accurate when I signed. Nothing had changed. I put the agreement back. Then I checked the shared calendar. 2 preparation meetings had been added for that week. I wasn't invited to either one. Craig's name was there. So was Benjamin Reed's. Benjamin was the VA contracting officer responsible for the pilot. I had spoken with him during the bid process. He was careful, direct, and not interested in sales language. The first meeting was called Implementation Readiness. The second was Presentation Alignment. I walked back to the conference room. Craig was packing the laptop into its case. "Why am I not on the VA meetings?" He didn't look up. "They're technical." Presentation alignment is technical? It's mostly deck work, about my injury and my company status, our company status. I waited. He pulled the zipper around the case. "I was going to bring you in later," he said. "When?" "Once we had something useful." I leaned my cane against the table. "I've been on every government call since we started. You don't have to do everything. That isn't an answer." Craig finally looked at me. "You slow these meetings down." He said it quietly. "What does that mean?" "It means every word becomes a compliance issue. On a government contract, every word can be a compliance issue. That's exactly what I mean." He lifted the laptop bag. I moved aside so he could pass. He stopped beside me. "This is our best chance," he said. "I need you to trust me." Trust had always been Craig's favorite answer when he didn't want another question. I said, "Put me back on the meetings." He exhaled through his nose. "I'll think about it." "No, you'll do it." His jaw tightened. Then he walked out. I stood in the conference room for another minute. The projector was still on. A blank blue rectangle covered the wall. At first, I told myself Craig was scared. We had been operating close to the edge for months. A large order had been delayed. Material costs had gone up. Craig had stopped replacing worn tools unless they failed completely. The pilot could stabilize everything. Pressure made people controlling. I understood that. What I didn't understand was why he needed to reduce my injury before presenting a device built from it. I also didn't understand why he was meeting with Benjamin without the person who had to approve the final contract. Around 9, Craig sent me a message. "Added you Thursday? Happy?" I checked the calendar. I had been added to presentation alignment. The implementation meeting was still closed to me. I wrote back, "Add me to both." He didn't respond. That afternoon, he came into my office carrying 2 sandwiches. He set one beside my keyboard. "Turkey," he said. "I can see that. No mustard. I can also see that." He sat across from me. For a while, neither of us spoke. The workshop printer hummed through the wall. Craig pushed the sandwich closer. "I'm not trying to erase you," he said. I looked at him. He held my eyes for half a second, then glanced away. "I didn't say you were. You were thinking it. I was thinking you changed my medical history." I changed a slide. Then changing it back should be easy. He rested both hands on his knees. "The VA wants a clean story. Did Benjamin say that? No. Did anyone from the VA say that? No. Then stop speaking for them." Craig stood. "You always do this. Do what? Turn a practical decision into a test of character." He left my sandwich on the desk. I didn't eat it. At 4:30, I opened the shared presentation folder. The forum deck wasn't there. I searched by date. Nothing. Then I checked the recent file list on the conference room computer. Craig had opened a deck from a local folder on the company laptop. He hadn't saved it to our shared system. That answered one question. The file wasn't unfinished because of normal edits. He had deliberately kept it outside the company folder I reviewed. I still didn't know why. I returned to the calendar and opened the implementation meeting. My name wasn't on it. The invitation showed a start time of 8 the next morning. I added myself. The system accepted it. That was my tiny win. 30 seconds later, Craig removed me. I watched the meeting disappear from my screen. Then my phone rang. Craig was calling from the workshop. I answered. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Attending a meeting about my company. I told you that one doesn't concern you. It concerns the pilot. It concerns production capacity." "Then why is Benjamin attending?" A pause. "He wants a complete view, so do I." Craig lowered his voice. "Don't make this difficult." I looked through the glass wall of my office. He was standing beside the workbench, with his back to me. "I'm not making anything difficult," I said. "I'm asking why my access keeps disappearing. You're being dramatic." I added myself to a work meeting. "You challenged me in front of the team this morning." There was no team in the room. That isn't the point. I let the silence sit. Craig hated silence. He usually filled it. This time, he didn't. Finally, I said, "Send me the current deck tonight. I'll send it when it's ready. You're using my photograph. We've used that photograph for years. Then send me the deck." He hung up. I stayed at my desk until the workshop lights went dark. Craig left through the side door without coming to say goodbye. After his truck pulled away, I opened the locked cabinet again. I took out the blue compliance file and copied the reserved authority page. I scanned the copy into my private company folder, then put the original back exactly where it had been. Next, I opened a new email to Benjamin. I didn't accuse Craig of anything. I didn't mention the altered medical language. I simply wrote that I had noticed an implementation meeting concerning the pilot and needed the invitation restored because I held final approval responsibility for government agreements. I read the message twice. Then I sent it. Benjamin answered 9 minutes later. "Kristen, understood. You should be included in all contract preparation meetings. I'll restore the invitation myself." The meeting reappeared on my calendar. I printed his response and placed it beside my keyboard. Then I took my untouched sandwich to the trash, picked up my cane, and went home, knowing I would be at that table before Craig arrived in the morning. The next morning, I arrived at 7:30. Benjamin had already joined the video call. His camera showed a plain office wall in the corner of a metal bookcase. Craig sat at the conference table with the company laptop open. He looked at me, then at my chair. "You came in for this? I work here. I mean this early. I'm usually here before 8. Benjamin glanced between us. "Good morning, Kristen." "Morning, Benjamin." Craig forced a smile. We were about to start. I sat beside him and placed my notebook on the table. The printed email stayed inside it. I didn't need to wave it around. My name on the invitation was enough. Benjamin reviewed production estimates and delivery times. Most of it was familiar. Craig had projected an initial run of 200 braces. The VA wanted confirmation that we could manage fitting, adjustments, and follow-up without sending veterans through 3 different offices. Craig answered quickly, "We'll handle everything through one intake process." Benjamin said, "Who owns that process?" "I do," Craig said. I turned toward him. Benjamin looked down at his notes. "The bid lists Kristen." "She built the original framework," Craig said. "I've taken over implementation." "That's the first I've heard of it," I said. Craig's hand stopped on the mouse. Benjamin looked at me. "Has the responsibility changed?" "No." Craig leaned back. "We're talking about execution, not paperwork." "Intake includes certification," I said. "So does follow-up reporting." "I know that." "Then you know why I'm responsible." Benjamin waited. He didn't rescue either of us. Craig finally said, "Kristen will oversee certification. I'll handle the practical side." I wrote down his exact words. Benjamin continued through the agenda. He asked about manufacturing space, material suppliers, and the number of fittings we could complete each week. Craig handled the design questions well. That was never the problem. He knew the brace better than anyone. When Benjamin asked how the device had been tested during development, Craig said, "We had several users give informal feedback." I looked at him again. "We had me," I said. "Then we had 5 adult volunteers through the rehabilitation clinic." Craig shifted in his chair. "That's what I meant." Benjamin made a note. "And Kristen was the original user?" "Yes," I said. Craig spoke at the same time. "Correct." Benjamin looked up. "I need one person answering factual history questions." Craig gave a quick laugh. "Fair enough." "Kristen," Benjamin said. "That should be you." It was a small thing. He didn't praise me. He didn't scold Craig. He assigned the question to the person whose name was attached to the answer. Still, Craig went quiet. The meeting lasted 40 minutes. At the end, Benjamin said the forum committee wanted a short founder interview if our company advanced. Craig nodded. "That won't be a problem." Benjamin looked at me. "Both founders." "I understand," I said. After the call ended, Craig shut the laptop. "You made that awkward." I corrected 2 answers. "You contradicted me in front of him. You answered for work I still do. I was trying to keep the meeting moving. You told him you took over intake. I said implementation. You said you took over implementation." Craig stood and carried his coffee to the window. "Why does every sentence have to become evidence with you? Because you keep changing the facts." He turned around. "You weren't even supposed to be in that meeting. There it was. Not technical, not scheduling, not an oversight." I closed my notebook. "Why?" "Because you make people nervous." Benjamin didn't look nervous. "I'm talking about everyone. Who is everyone?" Craig opened his mouth, then stopped. I waited. He rubbed his forehead. "You have a way of making routine conversations feel like depositions. That isn't an answer. You want names? I want to know who complained. No one complained. Then don't say everyone." He picked up the laptop. "This is exhausting." He left the room before I could answer. I remained there with my notebook open. Under the production estimates, I had written 3 lines. Craig said he owned intake. Craig said he took over implementation. Craig did not want me present. I stared at those words for a while. Then I crossed out the last one. It wasn't precise enough. I rewrote it. Craig deliberately removed me from a meeting. That sentence was harder to excuse. Around noon, I went into the workshop. Craig was trimming a foam insert with a rotary cutter. He wore clear safety glasses and kept his attention on the cutting guide. I waited until he turned the machine off. "Did you send the deck?" "Not yet." "When will you?" "Tonight. You said that yesterday." "I know what I said." He lifted the foam and checked the edge. I stood beside the bench. "Why did you tell Benjamin you took over implementation?" Craig set the foam down. "Because somebody has to sound confident." "I'm not confident. You're careful." That wasn't my question. He removed his safety glasses. "You know how you come across." "No, tell me." He sighed. "Formal. To a federal contracting officer? To people." I almost laughed, but he looked serious. Craig continued. "You walk into a room, sit straight, and start checking every statement. People feel judged. I was checking statements because 2 were wrong. They weren't wrong. They were simplified, just like my injury." His face changed. "Only slightly." "You need to let that go," he said. "It happened yesterday. I mean the wording." "Why?" "Because nobody wants to hear a detailed medical story. We included it in the bid. The bid was different." "How?" Craig reached for the safety glasses again. It was written. That answer made no sense, and he knew it. I said, "Send the deck by 5, I heard you." "I'm not asking whether you heard me." His shoulders dropped. For 1 second, he looked tired instead of angry. "Can we please not fight all day?" he asked. The change in his voice worked on me. It always had. I stepped back from the bench. 5 o'clock, I said. He nodded. I went to my office. At 4:53, the deck appeared in the shared folder. I opened it immediately. The service slide was still cropped. The phrase back discomfort remained. My title had been changed from managing member to veteran advisor and co-founder. I called Craig's extension. He didn't answer. I walked to the workshop. His coat was gone. So was the laptop bag. He had left early. At home, his truck was already in the driveway. We lived in a single-story house with a narrow kitchen and a back patio we rarely used. I had chosen the house because there were no interior steps. Craig had chosen it because the garage was large enough for a workbench. When I entered, he was standing over the stove. "Chicken and rice," he said. I set my bag by the table. "You changed my title." He stirred the pan without looking at me. "Can we eat first?" "No." "Kristen?" "Why does the deck call me an advisor?" "Because managing member sounds administrative. It's my actual role. The slide is about the product. Then why list a role at all?" He turned off the burner. "Because advisor sounds relevant to veterans. I'm a veteran. I don't need an honorary word. It isn't honorary. It isn't accurate." Craig placed the spoon on a folded paper towel. He always did that. Even while angry, he hated sauce on the counter. "The audience doesn't care about our operating structure," he said. "The VA does, the forum audience. The contracting officer will be there, and he knows who you are." "Then why hide it?" "I'm not hiding anything." I pulled out a kitchen chair and sat. My lower back had started tightening during the drive home. Craig noticed. His eyes went to my cane, then back to the stove. A few years earlier, he would have asked if I needed the heating pad. That evening, he said, "You're making this personal. It became personal when you rewrote me." He opened a cabinet and took down 2 plates. "I'm trying to position us correctly. Who is us?" He placed one plate too hard on the counter. "Do you hear yourself?" "Yes. You sound like I'm stealing the company. I asked why you changed my title. You're implying much more. Then answer the small question." Craig turned back to the stove. For the next minute, the only sound was the spoon scraping the pan. He served the food, put my plate in front of me, and sat across the table. We ate without speaking. The chicken was dry. I drank water after every few bites. Halfway through the meal, Craig said, "Do you remember the first trade show?" I did. We'd driven to Reno with 2 prototypes packed in plastic tubs. Our display cloth had been too short for the table. Craig talked to everyone. I stood beside him and answered questions about fit and pain. On the second day, a clinic manager asked who had designed the brace. Craig said, "We did." Then the manager asked who ran the company. I pointed at Craig. He hadn't corrected me. At the time, I thought I was helping. Craig said, "You hated that weekend. My back hurt. You told me you never wanted to do sales. I said I didn't want to stand on concrete for 10 hours. You said I was better with people. You were, exactly." I set down my fork. Being better at sales doesn't make you managing member. I didn't say it did. You changed my title. For one presentation, you told Benjamin you took over my work to keep the explanation clean. You removed me from a meeting because I knew this would happen. What would happen? This. He gestured between us. I looked at the table. Here was the part I didn't want to admit. Craig hadn't pushed me out in one motion. I had spent years stepping aside. After I retired, I didn't want to be the person in charge of every room. I was tired of being watched for certainty. I was tired of people waiting for me to decide whether something was safe, ready, complete, or good enough. Craig liked the front of the room. I let him have it. At trade shows, he spoke first. During supplier calls, I passed him notes instead of correcting him aloud. When local reporters visited the workshop, I stayed near the machines while he told our story. He always thanked me afterward. "You saved me in there," he would say. I liked hearing that. It made us feel like a team. More than that, it made our marriage feel like a place where I didn't have to prove I belonged. The Army had given me a role before anyone knew me. Retirement took that away in a day. At home with Craig, I wanted to be his wife, not the major, not the compliance officer, not the woman who checked every door twice. So when he interrupted, I let him. When he shortened an answer, I filled in the paperwork later. When someone assumed he owned the company, I watched to see whether he would correct them. Sometimes he did, sometimes he didn't. I had noticed the difference. I just hadn't named it. Craig pushed his plate away. "I need you with me on this," he said. "I am with you. It doesn't feel like it." What would feel like it? Trusting that I know how to present the company. You can present the product. That's not enough. Why not? Because they're choosing people too. I waited. He folded his napkin into a square. Then he said, "You don't like this part anyway." It was almost gentle. That made it worse. He had taken something I once said about physical pain and turned it into permission. Then I had helped him do it by staying quiet. I stood carefully and carried my plate to the sink. Behind me, Craig said, "I'll fix your title." "And the injury language?" "We'll talk about it tomorrow." "That means no. It means I'm tired." I rinsed my plate. Craig came up behind me but didn't touch me. "I don't want this contract to damage us." I turned off the water. "Then stop using the contract to remove me." He looked down at the floor. That night, he slept facing the wall. I lay awake beside him until after midnight. My back hurt, but I didn't get the heating pad. It was stored in the hall closet on his side of the room, and I didn't want to climb over him. The next morning, the title in the deck had been restored. Managing Member. The medical wording was unchanged. Craig had given me the easiest correction and kept the one that mattered to him. I saved a copy of that version before he could alter it again. Then I checked the file properties. The deck had first been created 3 weeks earlier. Not 2 days earlier, as Craig had implied. He'd started removing my injury and changing my role before the forum planning call, before the calendar dispute, and before he could blame any of it on our argument. I copied the creation date into my notebook. Then I opened our old bid submission and placed its company description beside the new deck. The bid said I exercised unconditional control. The presentation called me an advisor. I had spent years making Craig look confident. Now I needed to find out what he had been saying when I wasn't in the room. I started with the company email. I didn't search Craig's private account. I didn't open his laptop or guess passwords. I used the records I was entitled to see. Our main account held bid notices and formal messages. Craig's direct conversations with Benjamin weren't there. I could see replies referencing phone calls, but not what had been said. At 9:15, I sent Benjamin a short email. I told him we were reviewing our presentation materials. I asked whether the VA had received any description of our current responsibilities beyond the original bid. I didn't copy Craig. That was deliberate. Benjamin responded about an hour later. He said Craig had described himself as the operational decision-maker during 2 planning calls. His notes showed that I remained involved as a veteran advisor and compliance reviewer. Benjamin wanted to know whether that arrangement was accurate. I read the message 3 times. The wording matched the presentation deck. It wasn't a hurried edit. It wasn't about keeping one slide clean. Craig had already given the VA the same story by phone. I called Benjamin. He answered on the second ring. "Is this a good time?" I asked. "I have a few minutes. I need to understand your notes." "All right." "When did Craig say I was an advisor?" There was a pause while Benjamin checked something. The first conversation was 3 weeks ago. That matched the deck's creation date. What was the purpose of that call? General readiness, reporting lines, production authority. Was I invited? I believed you were unavailable. Why? Craig said you had reduced your daily role. I held the phone tighter. Did he say why? Benjamin chose his words carefully. He said you preferred to focus on the veteran perspective and avoid operational strain. Operational strain? That was the phrase in my notes. I looked through my office window. Craig was in the workshop speaking to a supplier. He held a sample strap in one hand and paced while he talked. Nothing about him suggested he knew I was on the phone. I asked, did he mention my injury? Not directly. What did he say? He said long meetings and travel were difficult for you. That was true sometimes. It was also not his fact to use that way. Benjamin, I haven't reduced my role. I understand. I'm still responsible for operations, compliance, veteran outreach, and final approval of government contracts. That matches the bid. It matches the company. He was quiet for a second. Then you and Craig need to clarify who can make commitments, he said. Craig can make operational recommendations. Can he bind the company? Not on a government agreement. Can he approve changes to representations in the bid? No. Benjamin's voice became more formal. I'm going to send a written question to both of you. Is that necessary? Yes. The answer came quickly. This isn't about presentation preference anymore, he said. I have conflicting information. There was the cost. I had wanted access. I had gotten it. Now the contracting officer had a reason to question us. When do you need the answer? I asked. By Friday afternoon. It was Wednesday. I'll make sure you have it. I need one answer from the company, not two competing versions. I understand. After we hung up, I sat without moving. My first instinct was to fix everything quietly. I could draft a clean explanation. Craig could approve it. We could send it together. Benjamin would have one answer. The bid would stay on track, and no one outside our office would know how close we had come to contradicting ourselves. That was what I had always done. I opened a blank document. Then I stopped. If I wrote the explanation before speaking to Craig, I would be doing the same work again. I would turn his inaccurate statement into acceptable language and let him sign his name under it. So I closed the document. I waited until his supplier call ended. Then I walked into the workshop with Benjamin's email printed in my hand. Craig saw the page. What's that? A written question is coming from Benjamin. About what? Our responsibilities. His face went still. I placed the email on the workbench. Craig read it. When he reached the last line, he looked at me. Why did you contact him without me? Why did you tell him I reduced my role? I didn't say it like that. He took notes. Notes aren't a transcript. Did you call me a veteran advisor? I said you were focusing on veteran engagement. Did you tell him long meetings were difficult for me? Craig set the page down. I was explaining why you weren't on the call. You removed me from the call. That was a different meeting. 3 weeks ago? He turned away and began lining up tools that were already straight. I was trying to establish a clear point of contact. You could have said you were the design lead. He needed someone with authority. You have authority. Apparently not enough. The words came out before he could soften them. I watched his hands. He picked up the rotary cutter, checked the guard, then put it back. What does that mean? I asked. It means I'm the one answering questions all day. I'm talking to suppliers. I'm solving production problems. Then somebody asks if I can approve a change, and I have to say I'll check with my wife. You check with the managing member. To everyone else, you're my wife. That sounds like your problem. It becomes our problem when they think I need permission for everything. You need approval for government commitments. You agreed to that 5 years ago. The agreement didn't expire. Craig walked to the other side of the bench. I didn't think you would use it to second-guess every decision. I haven't. You're doing it now. I'm correcting what you said about me. I was protecting the company. From what? He looked at my cane. He didn't answer. I stepped closer. From what, Craig? From looking divided. We look divided because you changed the structure without telling me. I changed how I described it. That's the structure as far as the VA is concerned. He shook his head. This is why I didn't want you on every call. I folded Benjamin's email once. You didn't want me there because I would hear you. Craig's eyes moved to mine. Neither of us spoke. The workshop heater came on. Warm air pushed through the vent above us. Finally, he said, "What do you want?" "I want an accurate response by Friday." "Fine. You're writing the first draft." He gave a short laugh. "Why?" "Because I want to see what you think our roles are." "That's a game." "No. It's work. You already know what the agreement says. I know what the agreement says. I don't know what you believe." Craig picked up the email and read it again. "You're making this bigger than it is. Then the draft should be easy." He looked as if he wanted to argue. Instead, he carried the page into his office. That was the first deliberate move that worked. I didn't write his answer. I didn't give him language to hide behind. At 11:40, he sent me a draft. It was 4 paragraphs long. The first paragraph described him as the operational founder responsible for company decisions. The second said, "I guided veteran outreach and reviewed compliance matters as needed." The third paragraph did not mention final approval. The fourth said, "We worked collaboratively." I printed it and walked into his office. He was eating crackers over the wastebasket. "This is still inaccurate." He brushed crumbs from his shirt. "Which part?" "You called yourself responsible for company decisions." "I am. Not all of them." "Do we need to list every exception?" "We need to list the one Benjamin asked about." Craig leaned back. "You want me to tell him I can't close the agreement? You can't. I negotiated most of this pilot. That doesn't change who approves it. It makes me look powerless. No. It makes our structure look like our structure." He turned his chair toward the window. I put the draft on his desk. "Try again. I have actual work." "So do I." I left. At 1:30, he sent a second version. This one said he managed design, production, and supplier coordination. It said I managed compliance, veteran engagement, and government approval. It still described my involvement as limited. I returned it with that word circled. At 3, a third version arrived. The word limited was gone. The last sentence said final execution of any pilot agreement required managing member approval. That was true. I added one sentence stating that I had not reduced my responsibilities. Then I sent it back to Craig. He called my extension. "You're making it sound like I lied. You gave Benjamin wrong information." I summarized. "You said I stepped back. I said you preferred less strain, without asking me. Because I live with you. That doesn't let you make business decisions from my medical history. I know what your bad days look like." "So do I." He lowered his voice. "You push until you can't walk straight. That's mine to manage. It affects me too." There was truth in that. Craig had driven me to appointments. He had tied my shoes during one bad flare. He knew which side of the bed I could get out of without twisting. For years, I treated that knowledge as proof that he understood me. Now he was using it to explain my absence from rooms I had never chosen to leave. I said, "Send the response. We should wait until morning." "Why?" "So we don't sound defensive. The deadline is Friday." "Exactly. We have time." I looked at the clock. "Send it tomorrow by noon." He agreed. That evening, he brought the company laptop home. He set it on the coffee table and worked through dinner. I sat at the other end of the couch with a heating pad behind my back. Around 8, he closed the laptop. I sent the corrected title to the forum committee, he said. Managing member? Yes, thank you. He waited, perhaps expecting more. I returned my attention to the television. Craig said, I'm not your enemy. I didn't call you one. You're treating me like one. I asked you to correct 2 false statements. You went to Benjamin behind my back. I asked what he had been told. You could have asked me. I did. He leaned forward and pressed his palms together. I need room to do what I'm good at. You have room. It doesn't feel like it. What would? He stared at the dark television screen between scenes. Knowing you won't step in every time I make a judgment call. I lowered the volume. You didn't make a judgment call about foam density. You changed my role for the sake of a cleaner presentation. We're past the presentation. Craig stood and took the laptop. I'm going to bed. I stayed on the couch until the heating pad switched itself off. The next morning, his side of the bed was empty when I woke. He had already left. At 11:50, Benjamin still hadn't received the response. I knew because I was copied on the open draft and nothing appeared in the sent folder. At 11:55, I called Craig. He didn't answer. At noon, I sent the agreed response myself. I copied Craig and attached nothing else. Benjamin replied at 12:17. Thank you. This resolves the question for now. Kristen must remain included in future pilot discussions. The action had worked. My access was restored in writing. Then I read the next sentence. Finalist decisions are expected Monday. If selected, your company will have 10 business days to resolve outstanding representations and execute the pilot agreement. I printed that message too. Craig came into my office 20 minutes later. You sent it. You missed the time we agreed on. I was reviewing it. You weren't at your desk. I can review things elsewhere. You didn't answer your phone. He shut my office door. You didn't need to do that. I said noon. You don't command me. I looked at him for a long second. No, I said. The operating agreement does. His mouth tightened. I expected him to argue about the wording. Instead, he looked at the printed email on my desk. Did he respond? I handed it to him. He read the line about finalist decisions. His expression changed. Monday, he said. Yes, and 10 business days, if we're selected. Craig read the message again. Then he placed it carefully beside my keyboard. We cannot lose this over titles, he said. I picked up my pen, then stopped changing mine. He left without answering. I opened the forum folder and requested access to every current planning file. Within an hour, Benjamin approved the request. 5 documents appeared. The deck was one of them. The other 4 concerned schedules, product demonstrations, room assignments, and speaker information. My name appeared on the speaker sheet now. My correct title sat beneath it. Beside Craig's name were 2 words I had never approved. Chief Executive. We had never used that title. I saved the sheet, marked the line, and added it to the questions we needed to answer before Monday. I sent Craig the marked speaker sheet. He appeared in my doorway less than a minute later. Chief Executive is standard, he said. Not for us. It tells people I run the business. You don't run all of it. He glanced toward the hallway, then closed my door. Can we stop doing this? Doing what? Arguing over labels. You created a label. The forum committee needed something short. Co-founder is short. It doesn't explain responsibility. Neither does a title you invented. Craig crossed his arms. What do you want me listed as? Co-founder and design lead. That makes me sound like an employee. It describes what you do. I do more than design. So list operations too. He looked at the marked page again. You really can't let me have anything, can you? The question surprised me. This isn't something I took from you. That's not what I said. It's what you meant. Craig opened the door. Fix it yourself, he said. I will. Our presentation alignment call began at 2. Benjamin joined first. Craig came into the conference room at 1:59 and sat at the far end of the table. I shared the speaker sheet on the screen. My title is correct now, I said. Craig's isn't. Benjamin looked at the document. What should it say? Co-founder, design and operations lead, I said. Craig stared at me. Benjamin asked, Craig? Whatever Kristen wants. That isn't what I asked. Craig leaned closer to the laptop. The title is fine. Benjamin edited the sheet while we watched. It took less than 10 seconds. Anything else? He asked. I opened the presentation deck. My service history needs correction. Craig said, We're still discussing that. I'm not discussing whether I fractured my spine. Benjamin looked from Craig to me. What is the disputed language? I put the current slide on the screen. Benjamin read it aloud. Back discomfort during military service. Then I showed him the earlier company biography. He read that one silently. The bid describes a vehicle rollover, he said. It also refers to spinal and pelvic fractures. That's accurate, I said. Craig shifted in his chair. The forum version is shorter. Benjamin said, Shorter can still be accurate. It is accurate, Craig replied. She did have back discomfort. I turned toward him. I also had a fractured T12 vertebra and sacrum. I know what you were told. The room went quiet. I kept my eyes on Craig. What does that mean? He touched the edge of the laptop. Nothing. You said you know what I was told. I meant I know the diagnosis. That isn't what you said. Benjamin removed his glasses. I'm going to pause this, he said. The VA cannot approve a founder account while the founders dispute the medical history behind the product. Craig looked at the camera. There's no dispute. Then use the language from the bid, Benjamin said. That version is too clinical. Make it shorter without changing the fact. Craig's lips pressed together. I said, I'll provide corrected language today. Benjamin nodded. Both of you approve it before it comes back. Craig didn't answer. Benjamin continued to the product demonstration plan. The forum expected us to show how the brace opened, adjusted, and fit around clothing. Craig had offered me as the person who would model it. I hadn't known that. Kristen can demonstrate the original use case, he said. I looked at the schedule. My name appeared beside a 15-minute fitting segment. When was this added? Craig said. Last week. You didn't ask me. We've demonstrated it together before. Not on a stage. You won't have to stand long. Benjamin spoke before I could answer. The demonstration is optional. We can use a display form. Craig shook his head. A real person is better. Then model it yourself, I said. It's designed around your injury. The one you removed from the slide? His face reddened. Benjamin said, Decide by next Wednesday. If Kristen doesn't volunteer, submit another demonstration plan. Volunteer. The word was ordinary. It still mattered. Craig had written my name into a public demonstration as if my body were company equipment. Benjamin had corrected that without making a speech. The call ended at 2:45. Craig remained seated while I disconnected the laptop. You embarrassed me, he said. You offered my body for a demonstration. That's a strange way to describe it. It's an accurate way. You've worn the brace in front of people, after you asked. I didn't think I needed formal permission from my wife. You need permission from anyone before volunteering them. Craig pushed his chair back. You used to believe in this product. I still do. You don't act like it. I'm sitting here correcting the story behind it. No, you're picking apart everything I've built. We built it. He stood. That's the line you care about, isn't it? What line? Making sure everyone knows you own part of it. I closed the presentation file. I care that we tell the truth. Craig gave me a tired smile. Your version of it. Then he left. I stayed in the conference room and opened the VA portal. The original bid package had been uploaded almost 9 months earlier. I had reviewed it in sections before submission. Craig handled the final upload because I had been at a medical appointment that afternoon. He sent me a message afterward. Submitted. Exactly as approved. I remembered reading it in the parking lot. I had replied with a thumbs up because my back was spasming and I wanted to get home. I had never downloaded the final uploaded copy. That was my mistake. I retrieved it now. The pricing section matched. So did the production plan. My signed control statement was the version I had approved. It identified me as managing member and confirmed my final authority. Then I reached the company narrative. The first page looked familiar. The second did not. My draft described the rollover, the documented fractures, and the difficulty of finding a brace that supported both injury sites. The submitted version described persistent pain after military service. It said conventional assessments had failed to explain the severity of my symptoms. It placed Craig at the center of the story as the designer who believed me when standard approaches did not. That was not the account I had approved. The final paragraph called me the company's veteran voice. It called Craig the operational founder. I checked the upload date. It had been submitted at 4:18 that afternoon. The document itself had been modified at 3:52, 26 minutes earlier. I printed both versions. Then I called Craig into the conference room. He arrived carrying his phone. I'm in the middle of something. So was I. I placed the two narratives beside each other. He recognized them immediately. What are you doing in the old bid? Reading what we submitted. You already reviewed it. I reviewed this one. I tapped my draft. Then I found this one. Craig remained standing. The second version flowed better. You changed it after my review. I edited it. You changed the medical facts. No, I removed unnecessary detail. You said assessments didn't explain my pain. They didn't. The original CT explained it. Partly. I looked up at him. Partly? Craig put his phone on the table. You had pain for years after the fractures healed. That was the point. That isn't what this says. It says standard treatment didn't solve the problem. It says the assessments failed to explain my symptoms. Same general idea. No, Kristen, this was 9 months ago. You told me it was submitted exactly as approved. I was trying to get it in before the deadline. You had time to change it. Because your version sounded like a medical chart. It was my history, and I made it understandable. You made yourself the person who believed me. I did believe you. The past tense landed between us. I touched the submitted page. Did? Craig looked toward the screen. I'm not doing this. You just did. You know what I mean. No, I don't. He picked up his phone. I said, why did you write that standard assessments didn't explain my pain? Because people connect with that. Is it true? The larger story is true. That's not what I asked. Craig paced to the window. People understand being dismissed, he said. They understand a husband trying to help when nobody else listens. That isn't what happened. It's close enough for a founder story. No, it isn't. He turned. The brace exists because I listened. The brace exists because I had documented fractures and standard products hurt. That doesn't give people a reason to care. I sat very still. There were a dozen things I could have said. I chose one. You will not change my service or medical history again. Craig stared at me. You will not describe me as an advisor, I continued. You will not create a company title without approval. You will not volunteer me for demonstrations. Nothing about my role, injury, or service leaves this office unless I've reviewed it. You're putting me on a leash. I'm setting a boundary during a federal bid. The timing is yours. He walked back to the table. If we change the narrative now, we draw attention to it. Benjamin already noticed. Because you put both versions in front of him, because the versions conflict. Craig placed both hands on the table. We are days away from finding out whether this company survives. We're solvent. For how long? Long enough to be accurate. You don't know that. Yes, I do. I handle the accounts. He pushed away from the table. Then you know what losing this would cost. I know exactly what it would cost. No, you know the numbers. I know what it took to build the product. I looked at him. So do I. He picked up the submitted narrative. For a moment, I thought he might tear it. Instead, he laid it over my approved version. I'll restore the fracture language, he said, and my role, and your role. Before Monday, yes, in every active file. Craig closed his eyes briefly. Fine. I sent him the corrected medical paragraph that afternoon. It used 4 sentences. There was no dramatic language. It stated that the design followed documented fractures from a military vehicle rollover and years of difficulty with standard supports. Craig approved it without comment. By Friday, the forum deck showed my correct title. The speaker sheet showed Craig's correct title. My demonstration status changed from confirmed to undecided. I checked every file myself. For the first time, the public materials matched the company records. That was the practical win. The cost arrived Monday morning. Craig was in my office when the email appeared. We saw the subject line at the same time. Conditional selection, Veterans Mobility Pilot. He pulled the visitor chair beside my desk. Open it. I did. The VA had selected Miles Hansen Mobility for the proposed pilot, subject to final verification and execution. The amount was $2,400,000. Craig pressed both hands over his mouth. I kept reading. We had 10 business days. The message included a schedule for final preparation, the Roseville Forum, and a secure link to the pilot agreement. Benjamin had not signed it. Neither had I. A paragraph above the signature page required me to confirm that I exercised unconditional control of the company and had personally approved the agreement. Craig leaned closer. "We did it," he whispered. "Conditionally. We were selected. We still have to complete verification." He stood and wrapped both arms around me. For 1 second, I let myself hold him back, his face pressed against my hair. "This fixes everything," he said. I looked at the unsigned agreement on my screen. The company could not receive payment unless I executed it. To sign, I would have to confirm that the control described in our bid was real. Craig released me and began talking about materials, hiring, and production space. I kept my hand on the mouse. 10 business days had sounded generous when the pilot was only a possibility. Now every inaccurate word had a deadline. Craig wanted to call our supplier immediately. I stopped him before he reached the workshop. "We don't have an award yet. We have a selection. We have a conditional selection. The materials have a 6-week lead time, so ask for availability. Don't place an order. If we wait 10 business days, we lose 2 weeks. If you spend company money now, we may lose payroll." Craig stood in the hallway with his phone in his hand. "We finally get good news, and your first response is no. My first response is don't spend money we don't have. We'll have it after execution. Then payment follows the pilot schedule." He lowered the phone. "How much can we safely commit? Nothing beyond normal production. That's too cautious. That's the account balance." He followed me back into my office. I opened our cash projection and showed him the next 8 weeks. We were solvent. We were not comfortable. A delayed clinic payment had left us carrying more material costs than usual. We could cover payroll, rent, and existing orders. We could not buy a full pilot run and hope the agreement became final. Craig studied the numbers. "What about a deposit? After the agreement is executed, we need to act selected. We need to act responsible." He walked away from my desk. This is exactly why they need one operational decision maker. They have one for operations. Who has to ask permission before ordering materials? Who has to show me where the money comes from? Craig put his phone in his pocket. "I'll ask the supplier to hold capacity. That's fine." He looked disappointed that I had agreed. Then he left to make the call. The supplier gave us 5 business days to confirm the material reservation. That created a second clock inside the first one. If we waited too long, production slipped. If we committed too early, we risked money we needed to survive. Tuesday morning brought the final preparation call. A new face appeared beside Benjamin on the screen. Her name was Renee Murphy. She was the Sacramento Fava Medical Center Chief of Staff and a diagnostic radiologist. She was also scheduled to speak at the forum. Renee looked at me for several seconds. "Major Miles," she said, "we've met." Craig turned toward me. I recognized her voice before I placed her face. "Mobility equipment review," I said. 3 years ago, you were trying to replace the transfer benches, and you made us measure every model again. 1 was too high, 3 were too high." I smiled. I was being polite. Renee laughed once. "Craig looked between us. You two worked together." Not exactly, I said. I served on a veteran advisory review. Renee said, she found a problem everyone else had missed. Benjamin brought us back to the agenda. The call covered forum timing, press access, product displays, and the order of speakers. Our presentation would come near the end of the morning. We had 12 minutes followed by questions. Craig had planned for 15. We can cut the manufacturing section, I said. That's the useful part, he replied. Benjamin said, the founder account and demonstration are required. Everything else is flexible. Craig opened the deck. The corrected service slide appeared. Renee leaned toward her camera. You're identifying 2 fracture sites, she said. Yes, I replied. Will you be displaying imaging? No, Craig said. I had not answered yet. Renee looked at me. I hadn't planned to, I said. That's fine. I'm asking because the medical review team needs to know what will appear on the auditorium screen. Craig clicked to the next slide. We're keeping the presentation accessible, he said. No scans, no clinical detail. Renee continued looking at me. Do you still have the original study? I have paper records. The actual CT series? I haven't seen it in years. Was it transferred into the VA system? Yes. Sacramento had it during my follow-up. Then the archive may still have the DICOM series. Craig said, we don't need it. Renee's eyes moved to him. I didn't say you did. He clicked again. Benjamin asked him to stop sharing the deck while they discussed the demonstration. Craig removed it from the screen. Renee said, if you decide to show imaging, it has to come through a secure diagnostic viewer. No screenshots from a personal file. Kristen would also have to authorize access. I understand, I said. Craig tapped his pen against the table. Benjamin confirmed our walkthrough for Thursday at the Civic Center. We needed to bring the brace, display form, and final laptop. After the call, Craig stayed seated. You never told me you knew Renee. I met her once. She remembered you. I delayed a purchase she was responsible for. She didn't sound annoyed. The benches were wrong. Craig turned his pen between his fingers. Do you still have contacts over there? Contacts for what? At the VA. I know people I've worked with. That would have been useful during the bid. I disclosed every prior working relationship they asked about. That's not what I meant. I know. He stood and picked up his notebook. We're not showing the scan. I didn't say we were. It turns the whole thing into a medical lecture. I heard you, and it creates privacy problems. I heard Renee, too. Craig stopped at the door. She likes you. She remembers me. Same difference. No, it isn't. He left. That afternoon, we worked on the demonstration. The display form was a gray fabric torso mounted on an adjustable stand. We used it for fitting photographs because it stayed still and didn't complain when Craig tightened straps too far. He placed the brace around it. The lower edge slipped. This is why we need a person, he said. The stand is too narrow. The brace is designed for movement, so create movement. He gave me an impatient look. It's a torso on a pole. I crouched beside the base. The stand had an unused mounting slot near the back. I asked Craig for one of the padded fitting blocks. What are you doing? Changing the angle. That won't create compression. Hand me the block. He gave it to me. I fixed the block behind the lower section and tilted the torso forward. The shape now approximated a person leaning slightly while standing. Craig wrapped the brace again. This time, the lower edge held. I adjusted the side straps and showed how the pressure points could be released one at a time. The front panel stayed visible. So did the internal support. Craig pulled the upper strap. The torso shifted but remained upright. He tried it again. It works, I said. It looks artificial. It is artificial. A live demonstration connects better. The product is visible this way, the story isn't. I stood and reached for my cane. That's a separate problem. Craig looked at the display form. You're refusing to model it. I'm giving you another plan. That isn't what I asked. You didn't ask. You put my name on the schedule. He tightened the final strap. If the committee approves this, will you at least stand beside me? Yes. And discuss your experience? Accurately. His mouth moved slightly. Of course. I took photographs from 3 angles. Then I sent the revised demonstration plan to Benjamin. He approved it before the end of the day. That was useful. I no longer had to choose between exposing my body on stage and making the company look unprepared. Craig received the approval too. He didn't mention it. At home, he spent most of dinner reading supplier estimates on his phone. I cleared the dishes while he calculated material costs. Finally, he said, "We can't do the full initial run without outside credit. We don't need the full run on day 1. The schedule assumes 200 units. The schedule phases delivery. The first phase is still expensive. We knew that when we bid. We assumed the deposit would be larger. The payment schedule was in the request. You approved the numbers. I approved the bid based on normal material pricing." Craig set down his phone. "So now what?" "We reduce the first order and negotiate release dates. That increases the unit cost, less than borrowing short term." He rubbed his eyes. "I could solve this if I had room. You can call the supplier, and then come back to you." "Yes. You enjoy saying that." "No, I enjoy knowing we'll make payroll." He pushed his chair back. "I'm trying to build something." "So am I. It never feels like it." He carried his plate to the sink. Later, I found him in the garage with the original prototype on the workbench. The foam had yellowed. One strap was held with stitches I had sewn by hand. Craig ran his thumb along the edge. "We had no money when I made this," he said. "We had less than no money. You wore it anyway." "Not for long. You said it helped." "It did." He looked at me. "You trusted me then. I still trust your design work." "That's a careful answer. It's an honest one." Craig set the prototype down. "I need you to stop treating me like I'm trying to hurt you. Then explain the bid narrative." "I already did. You said it flowed better. It did. You changed documented fractures into unexplained pain. The brace treats pain. It doesn't heal fractures. That's not why you changed it." Craig turned off the workbench light. "I'm tired." "So am I." We went inside separately. Thursday morning, we drove to the Civic Center in different vehicles. Craig said he needed to leave early afterward. I didn't ask where he was going. The auditorium looked smaller without an audience. Rows of empty seats faced a low stage. The screen filled most of the back wall. Benjamin met us near the front. Renee stood on stage checking the diagnostic connection for her own presentation. Craig carried the company laptop. I rolled the display form down the center aisle. At the edge of the stage, one wheel caught against a cable cover. I tilted the stand, lifted the front wheels, and pushed it across. Renee came down the steps. "Need a hand? I have it." She watched me lock the wheels. "You still test equipment yourself," she said. "Someone should." Craig connected the laptop. We ran the demonstration twice. The brace stayed in place. The display form held its angle. Benjamin approved the setup and removed my name from the live fitting note. Craig saw him do it. Afterward, Renee walked with me toward the secure viewing station at the side of the stage. "That old CT should still be retrievable," she said quietly. "I'm not sure I want my medical history on that screen. I wouldn't either unless there was a reason." I looked back at Craig. He was watching us from beside the podium. Renee followed my eyes but said nothing. I lowered my voice. "What would retrieval require?" "Your written authorization and enough identifying information to locate the study. I could confirm whether the series is complete. Nothing would be displayed without your permission. I'll think about it. Take your time." Craig called my name from the stage. I returned to him. "What was that about?" he asked. "The viewing equipment. You're not planning to add scans?" "No." That answer was true at that moment. He studied my face. Then he handed me the company laptop. "Take this back to the office? Where are you going?" "Supplier meeting." "I thought you were calling them." "They asked to meet." "Why wasn't it on the calendar?" "Because I arranged it this morning." He stepped down from the stage. "I'll update you later." Craig left before the walkthrough officially ended. When I returned to the office, 2 new preparation meetings appeared on the calendar. Both were marked design and production. Both included Craig and Benjamin. Neither included me. This time, Craig hadn't removed my access after an argument. He'd created new rooms and decided I didn't belong in them. I forwarded both invitations to Benjamin. I asked whether the meetings concerned only product design. He answered within 20 minutes. The first included material commitments. The second included the pilot implementation schedule. Both would affect the agreement. He restored my name to both. Then he added one sentence. "We need to discuss the company's internal authority before execution." I read it twice. Craig returned after 5. He entered my office without his coat and dropped a supplier folder on my desk. "You went to Benjamin again." I asked about meetings tied to the agreement. They were production meetings. Material commitments affect the agreement. I know that. Then include me. Craig pulled out the visitor chair. "You're making us look unstable. You're excluding the person they require to sign. They don't need you choosing foam suppliers. I didn't ask to choose one." "Then why be in the meeting?" "Because you're discussing delivery terms we have to certify." He looked at the email on my screen. "This has to stop. Yes. I mean you going around me. I'm not going around you. I'm going to the contracting officer responsible for the agreement. That is going around me. Only if you believe you stand between us." Craig leaned forward. "I am the point of contact. You are a point of contact." He opened the supplier folder. "They'll hold production capacity through Tuesday. What did you give them?" "A reservation." "How much?" $9,600. I stared at him. "You paid them?" "It applies to the first material order. If we execute, when we execute, where did the money come from?" "The operating account." I opened the banking screen. The charge had posted that afternoon. After payroll and rent, the remaining balance left almost no cushion. One late customer payment could force us to delay our own owner draws. "You had no approval for this. I run operations. You asked what we could commit." I said nothing. "You said to ask them to hold capacity." I said ask. I didn't say pay. They wouldn't hold it for free. "Then you should have called me. You would have said no. That isn't permission." Craig tapped the folder. "This protects the schedule. It puts payroll at risk. Only if the agreement falls apart. It isn't executed. We have 6 business days left. That doesn't make the money imaginary." He stood and walked to the window. "I am not losing $2,400,000 because you're afraid to commit $9,600. You already committed it. For the company, against a direct decision." Craig turned around. "So now what? You cancel it and prove you don't believe in us?" I called the supplier while he stood there. The reservation payment was not refundable. It could be applied to any qualifying order placed within 60 days. If we didn't place an order, it became a scheduling fee. I thanked them and hung up. Craig waited. "It stays," I said. "We can use the material for regular orders if the pilot doesn't execute. That's what I told you." "No. You told me it protected the pilot schedule. It does both. It also removes our cushion. We'll be paid, not before payroll." I opened the cash projection. To protect employee pay, I removed my next owner draw. Then I removed Craig's. He stepped toward the desk. "You don't get to cancel my pay. We can't safely take it. You have retirement income. That isn't company money. You'll be fine. That isn't the point. It's easy for you to be cautious when a government payment arrives every month." I stopped typing. Craig knew exactly how much my retirement income covered. He also knew what it didn't. We shared a mortgage, insurance, utilities, and every ordinary cost that came through the kitchen drawer in an envelope. I said, "The supplier payment was your decision. We both absorb it. I made that decision to save the contract. You made it so the contract would pressure me." His face hardened. "That's ridiculous. If I question anything now, you can point to money already spent. I didn't create the deadline. You created this cost." Craig picked up the folder. "Put my draw back." "No. We're married. We're also owners. You always choose the role that gives you the most control." I closed the banking screen. "Leave my office." He didn't move. Craig. He took the folder and walked out. That was the first direct financial cost. It wasn't enough to close the company. It was enough to change our month. We canceled a planned roof repair at home. I moved a medical appointment because the copay and travel would have landed during the same week. Craig said nothing when the appointment disappeared from our shared calendar. The next morning, Benjamin called before the preparation meeting. His voice was calm, but formal. "I need to ask you a direct question." "All right. Who currently controls Miles Hansen Mobility?" "I do. On paper or in practice?" I looked through the glass wall. Craig's office door was closed. "In practice," I said. Benjamin waited. I knew why. I had corrected titles. I had restored meeting access. I had prevented one order and failed to prevent another. From the outside, none of that looked like clean control. He said, "Craig has described himself as the operational decision-maker several times. He directs production and design. He also represented that he could commit the company to implementation dates. He can develop those dates. I approve commitments tied to the government agreement. Did you approve the supplier reservation?" "No." Another pause. "Then I need this resolved before you execute anything. What does resolved mean?" "It means the certification must describe reality. I'm not asking you to restructure your company. I'm asking whether the representation in the agreement is true. It is. Then your conduct has to support it." That sentence hurt because it was accurate. The operating agreement gave me authority. It did not exercise it for me. I had spent years letting Craig speak first and clean up later. The VA could not see the private corrections. They could see his titles, his calls, his commitments, and my name on the certification. Benjamin said, "An unsigned conditional selection is not an award." "I understand. If you sign, you are personally confirming control." "I understand that too. I need you to be certain." After the call, I opened the pilot agreement. My name appeared beneath the certification. The blank signature line looked different now. Until that morning, I had viewed the problem as a marriage conflict wrapped around a contract. Craig was proud. He was scared. He wanted credit. I believed I could restore my title, correct the deck, and keep him confident enough to carry the company through the deadline. That was no longer enough. If I signed while he kept exercising authority in my name, the false statement would be mine. The meeting began at 10. Craig entered the conference room carrying the company laptop and a document in a clear plastic sleeve. He set the document in front of me. "Sign this before Benjamin joins." I read the first paragraph. It was called a temporary delegation of authority. The title sounded narrow. The language was not. It allowed Craig to direct all preparation, negotiate implementation terms, approve delivery commitments, communicate company decisions, and act on behalf of the managing member through completion of the pilot setup. The only thing it did not clearly give him was my final signature. "How long have you had this?" "I drafted it last night." "With whose help?" "A business template." I continued reading. The delegation covered more than the 6 remaining business days. It continued through the start of pilot operations. "This isn't temporary. It is. It has no fixed end date. It ends after setup. Setup isn't defined." Craig sat beside me. "We need one person moving this forward. We have 2 people with different responsibilities. That is not working. Because you keep taking mine. I'm asking you to give me room. You're asking me to sign away the authority I'm required to exercise. Not final approval. Everything leading to it. You can still review the agreement. After you make every commitment? We don't have time for committee government. We aren't a committee." He pushed a pen toward me. "Benjamin joins in 4 minutes." I slid the pen back. "No." Craig's hand remained on the table. "Read it later if you want." I read it. "Have someone review it. I don't need someone else to tell me what it says. You're reacting. I'm refusing." His chair scraped against the floor. "Do you want this pilot?" "Yes." "Then help me get it." "I am." "No, you're building a record against me. You built this document to solve the problem you created." I placed the delegation back in its plastic sleeve. "The problem is that you want my control to exist only when the VA asks. That isn't fair. You want my signature at the end and your decisions everywhere before it." Craig lowered his voice. "We will lose this company if you cannot separate your ego from your job." I looked at him. Then the video call connected. Benjamin's face appeared on the screen. Craig took the delegation and moved it beside the laptop. Neither of us mentioned it during the meeting. Benjamin reviewed the remaining schedule. The final agreement call was set for the following Thursday. The forum would take place the next morning. If all requirements were resolved, the partnership announcement would happen during the forum. Craig answered the production questions. I answered the control and reporting questions. When Craig gave a delivery commitment, I asked what supplier date supported it. He opened the folder and provided the date. For once, the process worked exactly as it should have. After the call, Craig left the delegation on the table. "Think about it," he said. My answer is no. "You're willing to lose the pilot over this? I'm not signing it." That wasn't my question. He waited. I did not tell him what he wanted to hear. Craig picked up the document. "Then don't expect me to take the blame when this falls apart." He walked out. That evening, he moved a pillow and blanket into the guest room. He didn't announce it. He carried them past me while I stood at the bathroom sink. I watched him in the mirror. He kept walking. I slept alone for the first time in our house. The next morning, I opened the compliance tracker. The pilot agreement had been marked ready for execution. Craig had changed the status the previous afternoon. I changed it back. Hold control and factual representations require verification. Then I removed the planned signature time from my calendar. I was no longer trying to protect Craig's confidence or keep the award on schedule. I was protecting the certification attached to my name and the service record he had begun rewriting to make himself larger. I printed the hold notice and placed it in the blue compliance file. Then I opened a new document. This one was not for Craig to draft. I listed the decisions requiring correction before execution: company control, government communications, delivery commitments, my medical history, my service history. I kept it to one page. At the bottom, I quoted the operating agreement's reserved authority provision. Government contracts required my final approval. No delegation changed that unless I signed it. I sent the notice to Craig first. He replied from the guest room. "You're turning a private disagreement into a company crisis." I answered with one sentence. The company crisis began when private decisions changed public facts. He didn't respond. At 8, I sent the same notice to Benjamin. I told him I would not execute the pilot agreement until the factual and control representations were accurate. I also said no delivery commitment should be treated as final without my approval. That email was harder to send. My fingers stayed over the button for several seconds. Once Benjamin read it, I could not return to being the quiet wife who corrected everything after the meeting. I sent it anyway. He called at 8:20. "Are you suspending negotiations?" he asked. "No." "Are you withdrawing the company?" "No." "Then tell me exactly what you are doing." "I'm exercising the authority the agreement requires me to exercise." He was silent. I continued. "The current pilot document asks me to certify unconditional control. Craig has made commitments and changed representations without my approval. Until that is corrected, I can't sign truthfully. Does Craig agree?" "No." "Is he authorized to negotiate?" "He can discuss design, production, and operations. He cannot make final government commitments. Has that always been the structure?" "Yes." "Then I'll mark implementation terms pending your approval." "Thank you." "That is not an extension." "I understand. The execution deadline remains Thursday." "I understand. If the agreement is not signed, there is no award." "I know." Benjamin's tone softened slightly. "Kristen, I need clarity, not a history of the marriage. You won't get one." "Good." He ended the call. 10 minutes later, an updated preparation schedule appeared in the secure folder. 3 production commitments now carried the same note: pending managing member approval. My name appeared beside each one. That was the first visible result of the new strategy. I had not asked Craig to include me. I had not argued that I deserved access. I had exercised the role I already held, and the process changed around the fact. Craig came into my office just before 9. He wore the same shirt from the day before. "You contacted Benjamin." "Yes." "You told him I can't make decisions." I told him which decisions require my approval. He leaned over my desk. He marked everything pending. 3 commitments. The 3 that matter. Then they should be accurate. They are accurate. I'm reviewing the supplier dates today. We already gave him the dates. You gave him the dates. Craig lowered his voice. Are you trying to make me look incompetent? No, that's exactly how this reads. It reads like our operating agreement. He straightened. You've been waiting to do this. Do what? Pull rank. This has nothing to do with military rank. You know what I mean. I'm using the company role we both agreed to. When we started, you said you didn't want to run daily operations. I don't. This is daily operations. This is a government agreement. He looked at the blue file on my desk. You dug that out like a weapon. It has been in the same cabinet for 5 years. Craig walked to the door. I'm calling Benjamin. You can. I'm going to explain that you're reacting emotionally. I looked at him. If you describe me that way to the contracting officer, copy me. He left without making the call from my office. I spent the next 2 hours checking the delivery commitments. The supplier could support the first release date. The second date assumed a material shipment they had not guaranteed. The third assumed weekend fittings at a VA location that had not approved weekend access. I changed the first commitment from estimated to confirmed. I marked the other 2 as proposed. Then I attached the supplier email and returned the schedule to Benjamin. He accepted the corrections. Craig saw that too. At noon, he entered the workshop while I was checking the demonstration form. You changed my dates. I changed 2 labels. You weakened the schedule. I removed promises we can't support. We can support them once the pilot starts. The building doesn't have approved weekend access. They'll approve it. Then we can confirm it afterward. That's not how bids are won. The bid stage is over. Craig stood beside the display form. This is how confidence is lost. Confidence is not pretending. Every company makes projections. Then call them projections. He pulled one of the brace straps tighter. The stand tilted. I caught it before it fell. Don't do that, I said. It should hold. It holds under the demonstration settings. A veteran won't stand still under demonstration settings. A veteran also isn't a fabric torso. Craig released the strap. You see a problem with everything. I just kept the stand from falling. He walked back to his office. I reset the mounting block and tested every strap again. Then I marked the safe adjustment points with small pieces of blue tape. The audience wouldn't see them. Craig would. Whether he respected them was another question. After lunch, I called Renee. I used my private phone and closed my office door. She answered from the medical center. I've been expecting you, she said. Why? You asked what retrieval required. That didn't mean I'd agree. No, it meant you were considering it. I looked at the corrected founder slide on my screen. I want the original CT series located. Located or reviewed? Both. All right, I don't want it released to the company. It won't be. I don't want it copied onto our laptop. It won't be. I want the original DICOM series kept inside the VA system. That is how I would handle it. She sent a secure authorization form while we were talking. The form asked for the date range, facility, type of study, and permission for clinical review. I filled in what I remembered. The exact scan date was in my paper records. I retrieved the folder from home during lunch and found the discharge summary behind an old physical therapy schedule. I entered the date. At the bottom, I authorized Renee to retrieve and review the original series from the Sacramento 5A Medical Center Imaging Archive. I signed electronically. Before submitting it, I called her back. If you find it, who sees it? You and me, unless you authorize someone else. Can Benjamin know it exists without seeing it? Yes. Can Craig access it through the company? No. Good. I submitted the form. Renee received it while we were still on the phone. I'll start the archive request, she said. How long? It depends on the storage layer. These are old images. The forum is Friday. I know. I'm not asking you to rush a medical review for a business presentation. I know that too. I lean back in my chair. Renee, do you remember anything about the study? No. I don't rely on memory for imaging. That answer reassured me. She wasn't trying to take my side. She was going to look at what existed. "I'll call when I have a complete series," she said. I thanked her and ended the call. I did not tell Craig. The scan was my medical record. The authorization was not a company decision. More importantly, I didn't know whether the archive could retrieve it before the deadline. I wasn't going to threaten him with evidence I did not yet have. That evening, Craig stayed at the office after I left. At home, the guest room door remained closed. His pillow was gone from our bed. His toothbrush was still beside mine. I heated soup and ate alone. Around 9:30, he came through the front door carrying the company laptop. "Benjamin called me," he said. I set my spoon down. "What did he say?" "That you placed the agreement on hold." "I did. He wants unified answers by Tuesday. Then we should give him accurate ones." Craig put the laptop on the kitchen table. "He thinks I've been acting outside my authority." "Have you?" "I built the implementation plan. That isn't what I asked." He pulled out a chair but remained standing behind it. "I am not going to spend the next week asking permission every time I speak. Then speak within your role. You've made my role meaningless. You design the product. You direct production. You manage suppliers. And you can overrule me on a government contract. So yes." I folded my napkin. Craig opened the laptop. The crop deck appeared. He had saved another local copy. My title was correct. The fracture language was back. The demonstration slide showed the display form. At first I didn't see the difference. Then he opened the speaker notes. Under my service slide, he had written that my symptoms continued after the documented injuries had resolved. The next line said the brace was developed because my reported pain exceeded what later records could explain. Where did that come from? I asked. It's context. It's your opinion. It's the product story. You're suggesting the pain wasn't supported. I'm explaining why existing braces failed. No, you're explaining why you deserve credit for believing me. Craig shut the notes panel. The audience will never see that text. You'll say it. I'll explain the slide. Remove it. No. The answer was immediate. I looked at him. Craig sat down. This is my presentation, he said. It uses my service record. It presents my design. Remove those lines. We need a reason the product was necessary. You have one. Standard braces put pressure on 2 healing fracture sites. That was 15 years ago. It's still the origin. It isn't the whole story. Then tell the truth about the rest. He closed the laptop. You don't control what I believe? No. I reached for the computer. He pulled it toward himself. But I control whether your version becomes a company representation, I said. Craig held my eyes. For the first time, he understood that I was prepared to stop the agreement, not merely argue about it. He stood with the laptop under his arm. Then I'll make sure the company presentation stays within my role. He carried it into the guest room and closed the door. My strategy had worked. The VA now treated my approval as real. It also gave Craig a clear target. If he could separate the product presentation from the contract process, he could keep telling his version while claiming my authority did not apply. Craig sent the first email before 7 the next morning. He copied Benjamin and the forum planning address. The subject line was presentation responsibilities. He wrote that I had chosen not to participate in the live demonstration because of ongoing physical limitations. He said he would present the founder account alone to reduce strain and avoid confusion. I read the message at our kitchen table. Craig stood at the counter pouring coffee. You sent this without asking me. You refused to model. I did not refuse to participate. You said you wouldn't wear the brace. I approved the display form. The forum needs one clear presenter. Then say that. Don't blame my health. It isn't blame. You told them I can't manage 12 minutes on stage. I said we were reducing strain. You're doing it again. Craig put the coffee pot down. Doing what? Using my body to explain a decision you made. He carried his mug past me. You're welcome to attend. That isn't what the email says. It says you won't demonstrate. It says you won't participate. That's how I understood it. No, it's how you want them to understand it. He stopped near the hallway. We have a unified answers call in 2 hours. Maybe try being unified. He went into the guest room and closed the door. I replied to everyone on the email. I stated that I remained a scheduled company speaker. I had declined only to model the brace on my body. The approved display form would be used instead. I also wrote that physical limitations did not prevent me from performing my role. Benjamin answered first. Understood. Speaker schedule remains unchanged pending today's call. Craig did not reply. At the office, the company laptop was not in the conference room. Craig had taken it into his office and locked the door while he made a call. I used the conference room computer. At 9, Benjamin joined us by video. Craig arrived 30 seconds later with the laptop under his arm but did not connect it. He sat beside me. Benjamin began with company control. I need one answer today, he said. Not one preferred answer. The actual arrangement. Craig spoke first. I manage the company day to day. I said, he manages design, production, and supplier relationships. Craig continued as if I hadn't spoken. Kristen handles paperwork, compliance, and veteran matters. I also approve government commitments. That's the paperwork part. Benjamin raised one hand. Craig, can you execute the pilot agreement? No. Can you approve material and delivery commitments? I have for 5 years. That wasn't the question. Craig leaned toward the camera. I run operations. Kristen has final authority on government documents because of the company structure. Benjamin looked at me. Is that accurate? Not completely. Government approval includes commitments leading to execution. Craig can negotiate operational terms. He cannot finalize them alone. Craig shook his head. That interpretation appeared last week. It appears in the operating agreement. You never applied it this way before. I didn't need to. Because I handled everything. Because you didn't misstate my role before. Benjamin said, stop. We both looked at the screen. He removed his glasses and set them down. I'm not determining who wins an internal argument, he said. I'm determining whether the certification is supportable. It is, Craig said. Benjamin looked at him. The certification states that Kristen exercises unconditional control. You just described her as the person who signs documents after you handle everything. That isn't what I meant. It is close to what you said. Craig's hand tightened around his pen. My point is that she hasn't been involved in every daily decision. She doesn't have to be, Benjamin replied. She does have to exercise the authority the company claims she exercises. I do, I said. Craig gave a short laugh. Benjamin looked at him. Something funny? No. Then let her answer. Craig leaned back. I explained the supplier reservation. I explained that I had not approved the payment, had corrected the cash plan, and had reviewed the delivery dates. I kept my voice even. Benjamin asked, Did you reverse the supplier commitment? It is not refundable. It can be applied to regular production within 60 days. Did Craig have authority to make that payment? For ordinary operations, yes. Against a direct instruction, no. Craig turned toward me. You can't rewrite my operational authority because you dislike one decision. I'm not rewriting it. You froze my pay. I froze both owner draws. You moved your own medical appointment. That is not relevant. You brought up financial harm. Company cash is relevant. My appointment isn't. Benjamin said, Craig, why are you discussing her medical schedule? Because this entire conflict is happening during a pain flare. I looked at him. He continued. She gets rigid when she's hurting. Everything becomes a threat. Every decision becomes unsafe. I kept my hands flat on the table. Benjamin's face did not change. Craig said, I'm not criticizing her. I'm giving you context. You're discussing private medical information, I said. You told him the supplier payment affected your appointment. I told you that at home. The color left Craig's face. For a moment, he seemed to understand what he had done. Then he pushed forward. You're proving my point. You're treating a practical explanation like a betrayal. It was a betrayal. Benjamin interrupted. This call is about company authority. Kristen's pain level is not part of that determination. Craig looked at the screen. I'm trying to explain why she suddenly put everything on hold. I put it on hold because the representations are inaccurate, I said. Your version of them. The bid says I have unconditional control, and you signed that. Yes. While I ran the company. The words stayed in the room. Benjamin picked up his glasses but didn't put them on. Craig, are you saying the certification was inaccurate when submitted? No. That is what I need clarified. I'm saying we have different jobs. Then describe them accurately. I already did. Benjamin looked at me. I could have softened it. I could have said Craig was frustrated. I could have explained that he meant daily production, not control. That was what I would have done a month earlier. Instead, I said, what he described does not match the operating agreement or the bid. Craig turned fully toward me. Benjamin wrote something down. The pilot agreement remains pending, he said. I cannot clear the control verification today. Craig placed his pen on the table. What does that do to the deadline? Nothing. Thursday remains the deadline. And the forum? You may present the product. There will be no partnership announcement unless the agreement is executed. Craig looked at me. Benjamin continued. I need the final deck by Wednesday at noon. Both founders will receive the upload confirmation. Medical claims must be accurate. Product claims must be supported. Company roles must match the agreement. Craig asked, can I present alone? That is a company decision. I'm the design lead, and Kristen is the managing member. The call ended without resolution. Craig stood immediately. You did that on purpose. I answered the question. You let him think I admitted fraud. I did not use that word. You didn't have to. You said I signed while you ran everything. Because it's true. Then I cannot certify unconditional control. Craig grabbed the laptop. You have always had control when it mattered. When did it matter? When documents needed signing. When taxes were due. When veteran status helped us qualify. He stopped. I looked at him. Say that again. You heard me. Yes, I did. He held the laptop against his side. I built a product people want. You built a wall around it. I built a company structure that told the truth about who controlled government work. No. You built a structure that used your service to open doors. My service. Our company. My service is not a company asset you manage. Craig opened the conference room door. Then maybe you shouldn't be in the company's story. He walked out. At 11, he uploaded a revised speaker schedule to the forum folder. His name appeared as the sole company presenter. My name appeared under attendee. He had removed my speaking segment. I restored it. He removed it again. I restored it a second time and locked the company version for review. Craig then moved the presentation deck out of the shared folder. The link stopped working. When I asked for the file, he replied by email. The deck is design material under my responsibility. Final version will be uploaded by Wednesday. He had taken away the access I had recovered. Benjamin could require an upload confirmation. He could not make Craig show me a local file before then. At noon, the supplier called. The reservation window ended that day. To keep the capacity, we had to place the larger material order. Craig stood in my office while the supplier waited on speakerphone. Approve it, he said. The order required more money than our operating account could safely release. I asked whether they could apply the reservation to smaller regular orders. They could, but we would lose the protected pilot schedule. Craig pointed at the phone. Tell them yes. I said, we are not placing the larger order. The supplier representative confirmed that the reserved production slot would be released. Our payment would remain as a credit against ordinary materials, minus the scheduling fee. The fee consumed most of it. When the call ended, Craig stared at me. You just threw away $9,600. You spent it before we had an agreement, and you made sure it was wasted. I protected the rest of the account. We can't meet the pilot schedule now. We can propose a revised schedule. They'll choose someone else. They already selected us conditionally. Conditional means they can walk away. Yes. He struck the doorframe with the flat of his hand, not hard enough to damage it, hard enough to make me flinch. Craig saw that. He lowered his hand. Then he said, if you refuse to sign Thursday, don't pretend this marriage survives. I kept my eyes on him. Are you asking me to sign something true? I'm asking you to choose us. He waited. I said, "Those should be the same choice." Craig left the office. He did not come home that night. At 7:30, Renee sent a secure message. The original CT series had been located in the archive. The files appeared complete. She would review them on the diagnostic system the next morning. I sat at our kitchen table with the unsigned agreement open on one side of the screen and Craig's delegation document on the other. His empty chair faced me. If I used my reserved authority, the company could lose the pilot. The supplier fee was already gone. Craig had made the marriage part of the price. I closed the delegation. Then I wrote to Benjamin, "I will attend the final agreement call and the forum. The pilot agreement remains unsigned. I will not certify control I have not been allowed to exercise." I sent it before I could bargain with myself again. Renee called at 8:12 the next morning. "I have the series open," she said. I closed my office door. "Is it complete?" "Yes. Axial images, reformatted views, acquisition data, and the original identifiers. Can you confirm the date?" She read it to me. It matched the discharge summary. I sat down. "What do the images show? I want to be clear about something first. I'm reviewing the original study, not interpreting a screenshot or a later summary. I understand. There is a fracture involving T12. There are also fractures involving the sacrum." I closed my eyes. For several seconds, I heard only the quiet ventilation in my office. I had known the diagnosis for 15 years. I had lived with it. I had carried paper records from one appointment to another. Still, hearing Renee identify those injuries from the original images settled something inside me. Craig had spent weeks turning facts into opinion. The images were not an opinion. Renee continued, "The series is contemporaneous with the injury. The identifiers match your VA record. I can document that I reviewed it through the diagnostic system. Would you?" "Yes. I don't want a written medical report sent to the company. It won't be. Can the images be available on the secure viewer at the forum?" She paused. "They can. I'm not asking to display them. I understand. I only want them available if the presentation makes a false medical claim. Then I need specific authorization for potential display." She sent a second form. I read every line. It allowed Renee to access the series through the secured VA diagnostic viewer during the forum. It allowed her to identify the study and explain the visible findings if I gave permission at that time. It did not release the images to Miles Hansen Mobility. It did not authorize copies. I signed it. Renee said, "Craig will need to know before anything is shown." "No." She was quiet. "He needs to know when I authorize display," I said. "Not before." "Why?" "Because it's my medical record. I also don't know what he plans to say." "That's fair. He believes the scan won't be part of the presentation." "Will it be?" "Only if he makes it necessary." Renee did not ask for details about our marriage. She said, "The viewer will be connected for my medical presentation anyway. Your series will remain closed unless you authorize me to open it." "Thank you." "One more thing, Kristen." "Yes?" "The images can confirm the injuries. They cannot decide who controls your company. I know, that distinction mattered. The scan could authenticate the history Craig had challenged. It could not sign or refuse the pilot agreement. It could not make my authority real. Only my decision could do that." After the call, I opened the blue compliance file. I removed the operating agreement and checked the signature page. Both original signatures were there. The reserved authority paragraph had not changed. I scanned a clean copy and sent it to Benjamin through the secure folder. He confirmed receipt. Then he called. "I've reviewed the provision," he said. "What is your reading?" "Final approval of government contracts is reserved to the managing member. Can Craig execute the pilot? No. Can the VA accept his signature instead? No. Can the unsigned delegation he drafted change that? Not if you did not execute it. I am not advising you on internal company law. I am telling you whose execution the pilot requires. Mine. Correct. That removed the last uncertainty. Craig could control the laptop. He could control his own words. He could refuse to include me in preparation. He could not create the award without my signature. Benjamin said, I also received the corrected delivery schedule. Is it acceptable? It can be incorporated if the agreement moves forward. And the control verification? Still unresolved. What do you need? Your truthful certification and conduct consistent with it. I will not sign the temporary delegation. That is between you and Craig. I'm telling you because it affects the certification. Understood? He paused. Final execution call is tomorrow morning. The agreement must be completed by close of business. I'll be there. I returned the operating agreement to the blue file. Craig arrived around 10. He had slept somewhere else. His shirt was wrinkled, and there was a small shaving cut near his chin. He stopped at my office door. Did you send Benjamin the operating agreement? Yes. He called me. What did he say? That I can't sign. You knew that. He said the delegation doesn't matter unless you execute it. I knew that too. Craig entered and shut the door. You're making sure every path ends with you. The operating agreement did that 5 years ago. Because I trusted you. And I trusted you not to speak in my name. He sat across from me. For the first time in days, he didn't look angry. He looked worn down. What do you need to sign? He asked. Accurate representations. I fixed the deck. I haven't seen the final file. You'll receive it at noon. Remove the speaker notes about my pain exceeding the records. He looked toward the cabinet. Anything else? State our roles accurately during the forum. I can do that. Do not discuss my current medical limitations. Fine. Do not suggest my injury was unclear or undocumented. Craig rubbed his hands together. You want me to read from a script. I want you to stay inside the facts. I believe I have. The original scan documented the fractures. You have a paper summary. I know what the scan showed. He watched my face. Did you talk to Renee? Yes. About what? My medical records? Are you adding something to the forum? No. That remained true. I had added nothing to the presentation. Craig leaned back. What did she tell you? That's private. You're using private medical information to challenge a company presentation. You used private medical information to write it. I'm your husband. That has never made my records yours. He looked away. I could have told him the series had been retrieved. I could have told him Renee had reviewed it. I could have described exactly what she saw and watched him adjust his story before the forum. That would have been the easier choice if my only goal were the agreement. But Craig already knew the diagnosis. He had known it when he altered the bid. He had known it when he wrote the speaker notes. Giving him one more piece of proof would not create honesty. It would only help him avoid being caught in the next lie. I said, You have the accurate history. Use it. He stood. I'll send the deck. At noon, the upload confirmation arrived. The visible slides were accurate. My correct title appeared beneath my name. The fracture language matched the paragraph I had approved. The display form appeared in the demonstration plan. Then I opened the speaker notes. The 2 lines I had objected to were gone. In their place, Craig had written one sentence. Personal recollections of old medical events may differ. It did not name me. It didn't need to. I called him. Remove the last sentence from the service notes. Why? Because it undermines the slide. It protects us if someone asks a detailed question. From what? From making a medical claim we can't prove. We can prove it. With an old paper record. Remove the sentence. No. I looked at the upload time. He had submitted the deck 2 minutes before the deadline. Did Benjamin approve this? He accepted the upload. That wasn't my question. It's the final deck. I said, I do not approve those notes. They are speaker guidance. You don't approve my words. Then do not present them as company facts. Craig ended the call. I forwarded my objection to Benjamin. He answered that the visible medical statement matched the bid correction. He could not pre-approve every spoken answer. If the founders disagreed during the forum, each person would be responsible for what they said. Authority had reached its limit. Benjamin could enforce the signature rule. He could not make Craig respect me. That afternoon, I prepared one page for the execution call. On the left, I listed the conditions for signing: accurate control representation, no delegation, corrected medical history, delivery terms labeled honestly. On the right, I listed what remained unresolved. Craig still claimed practical control. He still treated my role as a signature function. He still reserved the right to undermine my injury history aloud. I did not include the scan. The scan authenticated one fact. It did not resolve the certification. At home, Craig returned just after 7. He carried a garment bag containing his forum suit. He hung it on the guest room door. "We can still fix this tomorrow," he said. "Yes, you sign, I present. Then we stop fighting. That doesn't fix anything. It gets us through Friday." "And after Friday?" "We'll deal with us after." I stood beside the dining table. "Craig, if I sign tomorrow, will you tell Benjamin that I exercise final control?" "Yes." "Will you mean it?" He took too long. "I'll respect the structure," he said. "That isn't an answer. It's the answer you're getting." He went into the guest room. The final execution call began at 9 the next morning. Benjamin reviewed the agreement from the first page to the signature block. The revised delivery schedule was acceptable. The corrected company description was attached. The payment terms had not changed. Then he reached the control certification. "Kristen, can you confirm this statement?" "Not yet." Craig shifted beside me. Benjamin asked, "What remains unresolved?" "Actual exercise of authority." Craig said, "We resolved that." I looked at him. "Did we?" "You refused the delegation. I accepted it. You also said you run the company while I sign papers." I was frustrated. Was it untrue? Craig faced the screen. "Kristen has final authority." Benjamin asked, "And in practice?" Craig's jaw tightened. "She is exercising it now." That was technically true. It was also the first time he had said it without calling me his wife. Benjamin looked at me. "The signature window closes at 4:30, he said. "If you execute, the partnership announcement remains scheduled. If you do not, the conditional selection cannot move forward. I understand." The call ended. Craig spent the next several hours moving between the workshop and my office. He brought production charts. He showed me projected hiring. He recalculated the lost supplier schedule. At 3:50, he placed the pilot agreement on my desk. The signature page faced up. "You have 40 minutes, he said. "I know. At least tell me what you're going to do. I told you what I need. I said you have final authority." Because Benjamin asked, "What else do you want from me?" The truth when no one forces it. Craig stared at the agreement. "If you don't sign, there's no coming back." I looked at him. That may already be true. He left the room. At 4:29, the agreement remained open on my screen. My name waited beneath the certification. I placed my hand on the mouse, closed the signature window, and accepted that using my authority might end both the pilot and my marriage. At 4:30, the signature page disappeared. A minute later, Benjamin emailed both of us. The agreement had not been executed. The conditional selection would be removed from the partnership announcement at the forum. Craig forwarded the message back to me with one line. "You still have time to fix this in person tomorrow." I did not answer. The next morning, I dressed before sunrise. I wore dark slacks, a white blouse, and a navy jacket. I considered wearing my uniform. Then I put it back in the garment bag. This was not a military ceremony. I took my service cane from beside the dresser and left the house alone. The Civic Center was already busy when I arrived. Staff moved between the lobby and the auditorium, carrying cables, signs, and boxes of printed programs. The address, 311 Vernon Street, was printed across the top of every sign. Inside the auditorium, the display form stood beside the stage. The brace was already fitted around it. Craig had removed my blue tape from the adjustment points. I put it back. Benjamin found me near the front row. "Is the agreement still unsigned?" he asked. "Yes. Has your decision changed?" No. He held a paper copy inside a black folder. I will announce the removal after the company presentation. I understand. This is not a finding against either founder. I know. It is the result of an unexecuted agreement. I know that too. Benjamin nodded and walked toward the side entrance. Renee was near the secured diagnostic viewer. Her own presentation was scheduled before ours. She wore a dark green jacket and carried no papers. "The series is available," she said quietly. "Keep it closed." "I will. If I authorize you to open it, show only what is necessary." That was my plan. Craig entered through the lobby doors carrying the company laptop. He wore a charcoal suit and the blue tie I had given him for our anniversary 2 years earlier. When he saw me, he stopped. "You came. I'm on the program." Not as a presenter. I restored my name. He walked closer. Benjamin removed the announcement. "I saw the email. He can put it back. The agreement is unsigned. You can sign a paper copy." "I won't." Craig glanced toward Benjamin. "Not here." "Correct." His eyes moved to Renee, then to the diagnostic station. "What is she doing?" "Preparing for her presentation." "Is your scan on that system?" I looked at him. He lowered his voice. "You said you weren't adding scans." "I didn't add one to our presentation." "That isn't an answer. It is the answer you're getting." Craig's face tightened. "You came here to embarrass me." "No. I came because my name is in your story. Our story. Then tell it accurately." He shifted the laptop bag higher on his shoulder. "I will." The forum began at 9. The room was not enormous. Most seats were filled, but it still felt like a local professional event. There were clinicians, veteran representatives, small manufacturers, and people from rehabilitation programs. Renee spoke before us. Her presentation concerned imaging access and coordinated care. She used sample images unrelated to me. The secure viewer worked without delay. Craig watched from the aisle. When Renee finished, the screen returned to the forum logo. Our company name appeared next. Craig took the stage alone. I remained in the front row with my cane between my knees. He connected the laptop and opened the final deck. The first slides covered the brace design, materials, and adjustment system. Craig was good at that part. He held the product in both hands and explained how the pressure points could be changed without replacing the whole support. He showed the flexible side panels. He described the fitting process in ordinary language. People listened. Several took notes. Then he reached the founder slide. My old uniform photograph appeared beside the corrected text. Retired Army Major. 3 deployments documented fractures following a vehicle rollover. Craig looked at the screen. He had a choice. He could read the accurate words and move on. Instead, he turned back to the audience. "The official version sounds very clear," he said. "Real life wasn't." I felt my fingers close around the handle of my cane. Craig continued. "Kristen had pain. No one disputes that. What the records meant over time was less certain." Renee looked toward me from the side of the room. I stayed seated. Craig moved to the next slide. It showed the first prototype on our kitchen table. "What mattered to me wasn't a diagnosis," he said. "It was that my wife said she hurt, and I believed her." The sentence was almost the same one he had built into the submitted bid. He had placed himself at the center again. Craig lifted the brace. "We designed this for people whose pain may not fit a clean medical explanation. That was not the product claim we had approved." I raised my hand. Craig saw me. He tried to continue. I stood. "The device was developed around documented injuries," I said. My voice carried farther than I expected. Craig kept the microphone near his mouth. "We can discuss wording afterward." "No, you're discussing my history now." A few people shifted in their seats. Craig gave a small smile. "This is what happens when you start a company with your spouse." Nobody laughed. He moved toward the display form. "Let's show how the brace fits." He released the first strap and turned toward me. "Kristen, come up here." "No." The word was clear. Craig held out one hand. "It will take 2 minutes. Use the display." The audience should see it on the person it was designed for. I did not consent to that. His smile disappeared. You've modeled it before. Not today. He looked at the audience, then back at me. We agreed to demonstrate the product. The display form was approved. This is better. No. Craig stood beside the brace with the microphone in one hand. I could see the calculation on his face. He believed the room would pressure me. He believed I would protect the company from awkwardness. More than anything, he believed I would protect him. I remained standing beside my seat. Craig said, "You're making this harder than it needs to be. Use the display form." He pulled the brace free. People deserve to understand why you won't wear the product you claim was built for you. A murmur moved through the room. I said, "Be careful." Craig laughed once. Not because anything was funny. The injury was fake. The words went through the microphone. The auditorium became completely still. Craig's face changed the instant he heard himself. He looked at me. I did not know he would say it. I knew he doubted parts of my history. I knew he had altered the language. I knew he wanted his belief in me to matter more than the diagnosis. I did not know he would call the injury fake in public. Craig lifted one hand. That came out wrong. It hadn't. He tried again. I'm not saying Kristen never had pain. I'm saying the dramatic version became part of the company's story. I looked toward Renee. She waited. I said, "Open the series." Craig stopped speaking. Renee moved to the secured diagnostic station. "What series?" he asked. I didn't answer him. The forum screen changed from the founder slide to the VA diagnostic viewer. Renee entered her credentials. Then she opened the authorized study. My name appeared with the original examination date. Craig stared at the screen. Renee enlarged the first set of images. She did not dramatize them. She did not speak to Craig. She addressed the room in the same calm tone she had used during her own presentation. This is the original CT series held in the Sacramento 5 Medical Center Imaging Archive, she said. The identifiers and examination date match Kristen Miles's record. She moved through the images. This area shows the fracture involving the T12 vertebra. She changed the view. These images show the sacral fractures. Renee stopped there. No speech about bravery, no judgment about marriage, no public lecture. She identified the study and the injuries. That was enough. Craig lowered the microphone. "I never saw those," he said. I looked at him. "You never asked. I saw later records. You saw what supported the story you wanted." He shook his head. "That isn't fair. You just called my injury fake. I said the story was exaggerated." "No, we all heard what you said." Renee closed the study. The screen returned to the company logo. Craig still held the brace in one hand. I walked to the stage. My cane struck the floor once at each step. Craig watched me approach. When I reached the stage, I did not take his microphone. I used the one at the podium. "My medical record is not the agreement," I said. "The scan confirms the injuries. It does not decide whether this company receives a pilot." Benjamin stood near the aisle. I looked directly at him. "I will not execute an agreement built on false representations about my history or my control of the company." Craig stepped toward me. "Kristen." I continued. "Our operating agreement reserves final approval of government contracts to the managing member. That is me. I have not signed the pilot agreement, and I will not certify control I have not actually been allowed to exercise." Craig lowered his voice. "We can fix the language. This is not language. Don't do this here. You chose here." Benjamin walked to the front of the room. He did not take the stage. He spoke from the aisle. "The VA's selection of Miles Hansen Mobility was conditional," he said. "The proposed agreement required execution by the company's managing member and truthful confirmation of company control." Craig looked at him. Benjamin continued. "The agreement was not executed. The conditional selection cannot become an award. Miles Hansen Mobility is removed from today's partnership announcement. There was no applause. That mattered to me. This was not entertainment. People in that room had come to discuss veteran health products. Our marriage had already taken too much space. Craig set the brace on the display table. "Benjamin, can we speak privately?" "The execution deadline passed. We can correct the certification. Only Kristen can make the required certification." Craig looked at me. I kept both hands on the podium. He said, "You're really letting it go? I'm refusing to sign. We'll lose everything." "No, we'll lose the pilot." Benjamin closed the black folder containing the unsigned agreement. "The company may continue normal operations," he said. "This decision concerns the proposed pilot only. He did not threaten us. He did not punish Craig. He stated the consequence and stepped away." The forum staff moved to the next scheduled item. Craig disconnected the laptop. His hands shook while he wound the cable. I removed the brace from the display form and placed it in its case. Renee stayed near the diagnostic station until the screen was fully cleared. People avoided looking directly at us. That was kinder than staring. Craig lifted the laptop bag. "You planned this," he said. "I prepared for the truth. You knew Renee had the scan." "Yes." "You let me stand up there. I asked you to tell the accurate story. You wanted me to fail. I wanted you to choose." His face folded for a second. Then it hardened again. "You cost us the pilot." I locked the brace case. "No," I said. "I refuse to buy it with my name." Craig carried the laptop out through the side aisle. I took the brace case and followed several minutes later. He was waiting near my car. "You made me look like a liar," he said. "You lied into a microphone. I misspoke. You said my injury was fake. I was under pressure. So was I." He stepped closer. "You could have shown me the scan yesterday. You already knew the diagnosis. I didn't know the original images existed. That didn't stop you from making a claim." Craig looked toward the building. People were leaving through the main doors. He lowered his voice. "You let the VA remove us in front of everyone. I didn't sign. You could have." "No, we were one signature away. We were one truthful company away." He opened his mouth, then stopped. I put the brace case in my trunk. Craig said, "Where am I supposed to go?" "I don't know. I mean us. I know what you meant." He waited for an answer. I closed the trunk. "I'm going back to the office." He moved away from the car. "Of course you are." I left him in the parking lot. Benjamin's formal notice arrived before I reached my desk. The conditional selection was closed. The pilot agreement had no effect. The VA owed us no payment, and we owed the VA no pilot delivery. The notice did not accuse us of fraud. It did not disqualify the company from all future work. It simply confirmed that this agreement had never become an award. I printed it and placed it in the compliance file above the unsigned pilot. Then I suspended all new VA bids. That decision cost us future opportunities, at least for a while. It also prevented Craig from pushing another government submission through before we understood the damage inside our own process. I sent him the notice. He replied from his company email. "You have no right to shut down an entire business area because you're angry." I answered. "As managing member, I am suspending government bids pending independent compliance review. Existing private work continues." His next response came immediately. "You're destroying what we built." I did not answer again. At 3, I met with our small team in the workshop. I told them the pilot had not become an award. I did not tell them about the marriage. I did not describe the auditorium. No pilot orders were booked, I said. No pilot hiring was completed. Regular production continues. One person asked whether anyone would lose a job. No. That answer was possible because I had refused the larger material order. The lost supplier fee still hurt. Our owner draws remained paused. The roof repair at home remained canceled. But payroll was protected. Craig did not attend the meeting. He arrived after everyone left. He walked into my office holding the printed suspension notice. "You announced this without me. I announced the loss of the pilot. You made it sound final. It is final. We could ask for reconsideration. On what basis? Corrected information." The deadline passed. Benjamin could make an exception. He won't. You don't know that. I listened when he spoke. Craig dropped the notice on my desk. "You're enjoying this." I stood. "Leave." There it is again. Leave my office. You get to give orders, and suddenly you're calm. I picked up my phone. I'm not arguing with you here. His eyes moved to the phone. What are you going to do? Call someone? No, I'm going to document that I asked you to leave. Craig stared at me. Then he picked up the notice. I'll work from home. Use the guest room. I need access to the shared office. Our house is not your command post. It is also my house. He laughed without humor, for now. He left. That evening, he was home when I arrived. 2 suitcases stood near the front door. He had packed clothes, his shaving kit, and the old prototype from the garage. I pointed to it. That belongs to the company. I made it. With company-assigned design records and my fitting history, the company didn't exist when I made this. That was true. I looked at the yellowed foam and the hand-stitched strap. Take it, I said. Craig placed it inside the top suitcase. I'm staying somewhere else. All right. That's all you have to say? What do you want me to say? I don't know. Then I can't give it to you. He zipped the suitcase. You chose a contract clause over your husband. I chose not to make a false certification. You always have a clean sentence ready. You had weeks to make this complicated. He lifted both suitcases. At the door, he turned. I believed you when nobody else did. The line had returned. I held the back of a kitchen chair. You keep saying that as if my injury depended on you. Craig opened the door. I guess it doesn't depend on anyone now. He left. I locked the door behind him. Renee called the following Monday. She told me the CT series had been removed from the forum viewing list. No copy had been released to the company. Thank you, I said. You don't need to thank me for protecting a medical record. I'm thanking you for being precise. That I'll accept. She paused. How are you? I'm working. That was not my question. It's the answer I have. Renee did not push. Before ending the call, she said, For what it's worth, you were right about those transfer benches. I laughed for the first time in days. So were the measurements, I said. That was always your point. After we hung up, our relationship returned to what it had been. Professional, respectful. She did not become my confidant. She had done one necessary job and protected the boundary around it. Benjamin's final message came that afternoon. He confirmed the procurement file was closed. He also acknowledged the company's voluntary suspension of new VA bids. I asked whether he needed anything further from me. No, he said. If the company returns to federal work later, the control structure and actual practice will need to match. They will. That is for you to ensure. I know. He did not praise my refusal. He did not condemn Craig. His role ended with the rule. I hired an independent compliance consultant the next week. She reviewed our bid files, meeting records, title changes, supplier commitments, and approval process. She did not review our marriage. Her findings were simple. Our written structure was clear. Our daily practice was not. Craig had been allowed to present recommendations as decisions. I had corrected records without requiring the process to change. Final submissions had no reliable second review. Government communications moved through personal company accounts instead of one controlled record. The review did not excuse Craig. It also did not excuse my silence. I had treated private correction as control. It wasn't. The consultant recommended one approval log, one shared submission folder, and written limits around contracting roles. I adopted all 3 for regular company work. Craig refused to participate at first. He sent a message saying the review was designed to blame him. I sent back the findings and asked him to identify one factual error. He did not respond for 4 days. Then he requested a meeting. We met in the conference room during business hours. Craig looked thinner. He wore an open-collar shirt and had trimmed his beard badly along one side. He placed a signed document on the table. It was not another delegation. It stated that he was relinquishing all responsibility for veteran contracting and government bid communications. He would remain design and operations lead for private work. I had someone review the wording, he said. Who? A counselor. I looked at him. She said I should stop writing documents when I'm trying to win an argument. That sounds useful. Craig nodded. I started seeing her last week. I read the document again. Why are you doing this? Because I can't keep saying you took authority I was already using. I waited. He rubbed his thumb along the edge of the table. I told myself the company was mine because the product came out of my head, he said. Then I treated your service like a qualification we could attach when it helped. I said nothing. Craig continued. When you corrected me, I thought you were taking credit. I kept trying to make you smaller so I wouldn't feel smaller. That doesn't explain the forum. No. What explains that? He looked at the floor. I wanted you to come on stage and prove I still had control of the room. My hand tightened around my cane. When you said no, I panicked. You called my injury fake. I know. You used the most painful fact you had. I know. He did not ask me to understand. That was new. Craig pushed the signed relinquishment toward me. I caused the pilot loss, he said. Not because I designed badly, because I dismissed your pain and used your authority while pretending it was mine. The sentence was not graceful. It was accurate. I signed the acknowledgement of receipt. This does not repair the marriage, I said. I know. It does not put you back in the house. I know. It keeps you in your actual company role while the review continues. He nodded. Then he took a card from his pocket. The counselor's office had written an appointment time on the back. She suggested structured conversations, he said, not reconciliation, just conversations with rules. What rules? No interrupting. No arguing about what the other person remembers. No asking for a decision about the marriage. I studied him. When? Next Tuesday, if you agree. I did not promise anything beyond one session. I'll attend once, I said. Craig let out a breath. He did not smile. He gathered his papers and left the conference room. The following Tuesday, I arrived at the counselor's office with my cane, my own car keys, and no plan to bring Craig home. Craig was already seated when I entered. The counselor's office had 2 gray chairs facing a small couch. I chose the chair nearest the door. Craig sat on the couch. He had brought no documents. The counselor explained the rules. We would speak about one event at a time. Neither of us could interrupt. We could correct a fact, but we could not argue someone out of what they experienced. Then she asked why we were there. Craig looked at me. Because I humiliated my wife in public, he said. And before that, I used her authority while telling myself she didn't really want it. The counselor asked me the same question, because I need to know whether accountability lasts after he stops being afraid of losing me. Craig lowered his eyes. That first session was mostly silence. When we did speak, we discussed the submitted bid narrative. Craig admitted he had changed it because my version made the product seem like a practical response to documented injuries. His version made him necessary. I wanted to be the person who saw what everyone else missed, he said. You didn't see the fractures? No, you saw me. Yes. Then you decided seeing me made the facts less important. Craig nodded. That's what I did. He did not say he had meant well. He did not remind me about the kitchen prototype. He did not ask whether his good years should count against one bad month. When the session ended, he walked me to the parking lot. Can I call you this week? He asked. About the company during work hours. And after work? Not yet. He accepted that. The first test came 3 days later. A private clinic asked whether we could move an order ahead by 1 week. Craig reviewed production and decided we could. In the past, he would have promised the date, then told me afterward. This time, he entered the change in the approval log. He attached the supplier schedule and sent it to me before answering the clinic. I approved it. He did not come into my office expecting praise. The second test came during a product call. The clinic director introduced Craig as our chief executive. Craig corrected him. I'm the design and operations lead, he said. Kristen Miles is the managing member. He said it without looking at me first. Later, I found the correction in the meeting notes. That mattered more than an apology. The compliance review ended 2 weeks after the forum. We adopted every recommendation. Government contracting access was removed from Craig's account. If we ever resumed VA bids, submissions would require my recorded approval before upload. No local presentation file could replace the controlled company version. Craig signed the revised procedure. He did not ask for an exception. We used the remaining supplier credit on ordinary orders. We still lost most of the scheduling fee, but the rest did not disappear. Payroll continued. Our owner draws resumed at a smaller amount the following month. The roof repair waited. So did my rescheduled medical appointment. When I finally attended it, I drove myself. Craig knew the date because it remained on the shared household calendar, but he did not mention it to anyone at work. That should have been normal. For us, it was evidence. At the second counseling session, Craig returned the house key. He placed it on the small table beside my chair. "I won't come in unless you invite me," he said. "Where are you staying?" "A furnished place near the office." "Are you asking to come home?" "No." The answer surprised me. Craig continued, "I want to." "I'm not asking." The counselor asked why. Because wanting access isn't the same as earning trust. I picked up the key and placed it in my purse. We spoke about the forum next. Craig did not remember deciding to call my injury fake. He remembered feeling trapped after I refused to come on stage. "I thought everyone could see you weren't following me anymore," he said. "They could. I wanted control back. So you attacked the fact you knew would hurt most." "Yes." "What did you think I would do? Come up there and calm me down?" I looked at him. "That is the worst part." "I know." "No. The worst part is that I almost did." Craig's face changed. I told him about the second after his accusation. My body had already begun moving toward the stage before I stopped. Years of habit had told me to protect him from the consequence of his own words. "I trained you to expect that," I said. "You didn't train me to say it." "No." But I helped build the silence around it. The counselor asked what I needed from Craig. I need him to stop making my quietness mean yes. Craig wrote that down. During the next month, he tested that promise several times. Once, he brought me a revised product brochure. It described the brace as inspired by my recovery from documented spinal and pelvic fractures. "Do you approve this?" he asked. I changed 2 sentences. Craig accepted both. Another time, he proposed using my uniform photograph at a private rehabilitation conference. "No," I said. He removed it. He did not ask me to reconsider. He used a photograph of the product instead. The largest test involved the company website. Our founder page still centered Craig's design story. My biography appeared below his and used the phrase veteran advisor. I had missed it during the earlier file review because the page had not been updated in more than a year. Craig found it himself. He corrected my title, restored the accurate injury account, and changed his title to Design and Operations Lead. Then he sent me the unpublished page for approval. I called him. "Why didn't you publish it?" "Because it includes your history, thank you." "You don't have to thank me." "No, I don't." I approved the page. He published it without adding anything back. The VA suspension remained in place. Craig asked once when I planned to lift it. "When the company can show the new process works over time." "How much time?" "I haven't decided." He nodded. That ended the conversation. He never contacted Benjamin seeking another path. He never asked Renee for access to my records. He never described the lost pilot as something the government had taken from us. When a supplier mentioned the forum, Craig said, "I made false statements," and Kristen refused to certify the agreement. The supplier changed the subject. Craig did not. He added, "That is why the pilot did not execute." I heard about that conversation because he entered it in the compliance notes. By our 6th counseling session, we could sit in the same room without trying to control the ending. Craig asked if I wanted a legal separation. "I haven't decided. Do you want me to keep waiting?" "I want you to keep doing the work whether I return or not." He looked down at his hands. "I am. I know." That was as close as I came to reassurance. We began having dinner once every other week. The first dinner took place at a quiet restaurant. We arrived separately and paid from our personal accounts. The second was at our house. Craig rang the doorbell. He did not use his old key. I opened the door and stepped aside. He carried a small paper bag from the grocery store. "I brought rice," he said. "I remember we're out." "We?" He stopped. "You're out. Thank you." We cooked together. When my back tightened, I sat down. Craig noticed, but he did not announce it or take over. He placed the heating pad on the empty chair beside me. "Do you want this?" he asked. "Yes." He handed it to me. That was all. After dinner, he washed the dishes. Then he left at the time we had agreed. He did not ask to stay. Several months after the forum, we were still married and living separately. I did not call that reconciliation. I called it continued conversation. Craig remained in counseling. He stayed out of veteran contracting. At work, he brought design decisions to me only when they crossed into compliance or company commitments. I stopped correcting problems silently and started recording decisions while they were still decisions. The company did not become famous. We did not replace the pilot with a larger contract. We kept our regular customers. We repaired worn tools one at a time. The brown ceiling tile stayed above the break room for another quarter. Then Craig replaced it during a scheduled maintenance afternoon. He submitted the expense first. I approved it. If this story moved you, subscribe and let me know where you are watching from. Near the end of the year, I completed the final internal review. The controlled files matched the approval log. Craig's relinquishment of veteran contracting remained in force. The government bid suspension stayed active. I closed the consultant's report and returned it to the blue compliance file. The unsigned pilot agreement was still there. I considered shredding it. Instead, I kept it as a company record. It showed what had been offered, what had been required, and what I had refused to certify. Craig knocked on my open office door. "The new fitting samples are ready," he said. "I'll look at them after lunch." "All right?" He waited. "Dinner Tuesday?" he asked. "Yes, 7. At the restaurant?" "At the house." Craig nodded once. Then he returned to the workshop. I heard the cutter start through the wall. The sound was steady and familiar. I closed the compliance file and placed it in the cabinet. Then I brought the unsigned agreement back to my desk. I sat in the managing member's chair with my service cane beside me and the unsigned pilot agreement closed beneath my hand.